Chapter 467. The scorching sun was so hot that it hurt all over their bodies. When they touched their skin, they could feel a tingling sensation. Emogue and Fengwu walked slowly through the desert under the scorching sun. This desert was simply too big. They walked for a long time, but they didn't see a single water source, nor did they see a place to rest. In the end, Emogue made a shelf out of a cloak he had gotten before. The two sat under the shelf to block out the scorching sun. The sun is too strong. The two sat down to drink water and rest to recover their strength. Emogue wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked up at the scorching sun in the sky. Most of the things they got from the snow mountains were winter clothes and furs. Those clothes were too thick. Walking in the desert with such thick clothes was like getting heat stroke at any moment. But if they didn't use those clothes to cover their exposed skin, they would have to worry about getting sunburned. His and Fengwu's arms were already covered in blisters. If they continued like this, how were they going to get out of the desert? It hurts. Fengwu wet a handkerchief and covered her face with it. The stinging sensation immediately subsided. Find some clothes to cover your body. I don't believe we'll get sunburned, Emogue said, unwilling to give up. Originally, a small sunburn wouldn't be a problem for them. Unfortunately, they had lost their abilities and were now ordinary people. With the sun shining on their faces, it was hot and uncomfortable. Our clothes are too thick. They didn't have many summer clothes. All they had was winter clothes. It's fine. I got 2 cotton padded clothes from the box. Let's take them off and use them as summer clothes. In any case, they just wanted to block out the sun. It didn't matter if they looked good or not. The two of them took off a thick and heavy cotton padded jacket each. They removed all the cotton used to keep the jacket warm, leaving only the outer fabric. Although it was thicker than ordinary summer clothes, it was much better than just wearing a cotton padded jacket. The two of them used the clothes they got from the laundry to cover themselves from head to toe. Emogue also used medicine to check the wounds on their hands and faces. Emogue's luck was pretty good. He had opened a few boxes of useful items: clothes, shoes, hats, medicine, and the like, and he hadn't encountered a single trap box. His luck was pretty good. Even Fengwu's luck was not as good as his, which was why the two of them could still use the medicine. After wrapping his head and body with clothes, he didn't feel so uncomfortable. Little Sister Alpaca was fine. As expected of a magical beast, she was born with thick skin and flesh. Even in the desert, she didn't suffer much. The weather was truly too hot, but Emogue told them to save water. The desert was so vast. Who knew when they'd be able to replenish their water pouches? If they didn't plan on drinking water, he was afraid they'd die of thirst and withdraw from the competition. At that time, he would be laughed to death by a juror. That kind of situation could never happen to him. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Thinking of this, Emogue's plan for drinking water became even stricter. All of this was so that the two of them wouldn't have to worry about dying of thirst in the desert. As night fell, the temperature in the desert began to suddenly drop. During the day, the temperature had clearly risen to 40 to 50 degrees, but at night, the temperature dropped to -10 degrees. Fortunately, they hadn't thrown away their winter clothes, which could be put to good use. The threat from the night was not only because of the sudden drop in temperature, but also because a type of magic beast that lived at night had come out to roam about. Listening to the scalp-numbing howls of the wolves in the desert made people's hearts tremble. Right now, their physiques were only slightly better than that of ordinary people. In the desert at night, there were actually magical beasts running amok. How could these bitter little contestants survive? When the contestants discovered that there were magical beasts appearing at night, they secretly cursed the school teachers in their hearts. What was this? Did they have to make it so difficult? Those who had originally planned to travel at night and rest during the day had no choice but to give up on that idea. It was so dangerous at night. Only someone with a screw loose would want to travel at night. On the first night, Fengwu and Emogue found a pile of rocks and rested for the night. They didn't even dare to take out their tents. Each of them wrapped themselves in an animal skin cloak and took turns patrolling. Although the howls of the wolves could be heard from time to time in the distance, they safely passed the first night. The next day, Fengwu and Emogue wrapped themselves in clothes and continued on their way. The temperature rose again, and the high temperature made them feel like they were about to be roasted. On such a hot day, whether it was dry rations or grilled fish, they didn't have much of an appetite. But they had to eat. If they didn't eat, they wouldn't have the strength to walk out of the desert. In the end, Fengwu and Imogue only ate a little, took a short nap, and continued on their way. Nighttime was too dangerous, so they could only travel during the day. No matter how hot the sun was during the day, they had to hurry. After traveling for another 2 hours, Fengwu and Imogue actually saw the first group of contestants. It was a group of 5. These 5 people clearly knew each other, otherwise they wouldn't have been so confident in forming an alliance in the individual competition. The 5 of them were in a sorry state. Each of them had a winter coat over their heads to block the sun. Even though they were sweating profusely, they didn't have the slightest intention of taking off their coats to cool off. The 5 of them were surprised to see Fengwu and Imogue, but after a brief moment of surprise, they returned to normal. One of the 2 girls in the group was very interested in the little alpaca that Fengwu was riding. From the moment they met, her gaze hadn't left the little alpaca. Everyone was walking the same path. Although they had bumped into each other, they didn't interfere with each other's business. Each team walked on one side, and neither side interacted with each other. Seeing that they weren't looking for trouble, Imogue and Fengwu naturally wouldn't take the initiative to find trouble with them. They just silently hurried on without any interaction. However, the girl who was interested in the little alpaca suddenly pulled the tall man beside her aside and said something. The man muttered to himself for a moment before nodding and walking in front of Fengwu and Imogue. "Can you lend us your mount? My little sister can't walk anymore and wants to borrow your mount. Once she's rested, she'll immediately return it to you." The man looked a bit serious, but his aura was very imposing. With one look, one could tell that he wasn't an unknown person at school. "If your little sister is tired, you can just find a place to rest. Our duo won't lend it to you." Imogue knew that Fengwu loved her new friend, duo, very much. How could she agree to lend duo to others? Chapter 468. Besides, with duo's temperament, it would be strange if she agreed. Other than Fengwu, no one else could ride on this bad-tempered little magical beast. "You two, we're all classmates. Our boss's sister is only borrowing your mount. It's not like she won't return it. Why are you so stingy?" The other 2 men called out. These 2 were obviously the tall and strong boy's subordinates. Naturally, they were on the boss's side. Duo isn't a mount. She's my friend. Duo won't lend it to me," Fengwu said seriously as she looked at the man. "It's clearly an alpaca. What friend? If you don't want to lend it to me, just say so. There's no need to find such an excuse," the boss's sister said with a strange tone. Fengwu didn't like her tone. She felt a little annoyed, so she turned her head and didn't look at her. Seeing that Fengwu didn't answer, she couldn't find trouble even if she wanted to. She snorted angrily, but didn't stubbornly run to Fengwu to court death. "Both of you, if you're willing to lend this alpaca today, I'll owe you a favor after the competition. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to me for help." The boss was quite reasonable. He didn't start a fight without a word. A favor. Imogue really didn't expect that the 4th grade 7th seat would offer such a condition. This man was quite famous in school. He was the 4th grade 7th seat. His swordsmanship was very powerful. There were only a few 4th grade students who could beat him. It was said that he was born in a big family and received a good education from a young age. There was a big difference between him and those aristocrats who used their power to bully others. There was almost no negative news about him in school. He was famous for being a good person and was very popular in school. There were many people who wanted to follow him in school. It was no wonder that 2 of his followers called him boss. Fengwu didn't know much about the boss in front of her. Among the famous people in school, she only knew Ming Shi. Even if the other famous people were standing in front of her, she wouldn't recognize them. Although he was a little surprised, Imogue firmly rejected the offer. This favor was very tempting to others. With the protection of a senior student in the 10th seat, their days would be much better, and they would not have to worry about being bullied. However, Fengwu didn't need this kind of benefit. He knew that Senior Ming Shi had always taken care of Fengwu. Senior Ming Shi had already been promoted for 6 years and was now the 6th year's chief. He was definitely a figure standing at the top of the pyramid in the school. With Senior Ming Shi's care, Fengwu naturally didn't need a favor from a fourth year's 10th seat student. Although Algernon was surprised to hear that he was rejected again, he didn't intend to cause trouble for the other party. As a fourth year's 10th seat student, he still had this kind of magnanimity. Moreover, with his status, he wouldn't want to rob the things of two seniors. Algernon's sister, Pamela, was a little unhappy. She still wanted to say something, but when she met her brother's gaze, she didn't say anything. Although she was usually a little unruly and willful, she still knew the severity of the situation. Her brother had already told her that their performance in the competition would be broadcasted live. No matter how bad her temper was, she couldn't vent it in front of the whole school. If she really dared to do so, her brother would definitely not forgive her. Their family had a lot of children. If it wasn't for her good talent and her brother being a 10th seat student, she wouldn't have been valued by the family. She didn't dare to make her brother angry. Although her brother had always been gentle and polite in front of outsiders, he had always been courteous and respectful. If her brother was really angered, it wouldn't be a joke. Thinking of the consequences of her brother's anger, Pamela could only obediently shut her mouth. However, her gaze towards Fengwu clearly showed that she hadn't given up. When Fengwu wasn't paying attention, the only girl standing there who hadn't said anything looked at Fengwu. She opened her mouth to say something, but in the end, she closed her mouth. They weren't familiar with each other to begin with, and Pamela was eyeing her mount, so it was better not to greet her. After rushing for a day, the two teams coincidentally found a place to rest before the sun went down. This time, they weren't very lucky. There wasn't a ready-made place for them to rest, and there wasn't enough time for them to continue, so they could only set up tents on both sides. Fengwu and Immerse only set up one tent, and the two of them took turns to keep watch. The alpaca sister carried Fengwu for a day. Fengwu let it rest well and didn't let Duo join in the night watch, although Duo wanted to help. Marissa, what are you making? It tastes so bad. Don't you have anything better? Pamela spat out the dry and hard bread in her mouth and drank half a bag of water to get rid of the dryness in her mouth. I'm sorry, Pamela. I got this bread when I opened a box. Although it doesn't taste very good, it's very good. Marissa was probably used to Pamela's temper and said with an apologetic expression, You should keep this disgusting thing for yourself. Pamela threw the black bread at Marissa's face in disgust, then took out some jerky from her dimensional space and ate it with relish. I'm sorry, Pamela is still young. She's been spoiled since she was young. Please don't take it to heart. Algernon said apologetically. Marissa clenched her fists without leaving a trace, then loosened them as if nothing had happened. It's fine. She's just impatient. I don't mind. After Marissa left the tent, Pamela reluctantly put the jerky into her dimensional space. Brother, she's so poor. Why are you being so nice to her? Is she worthy of your apology? Pamela didn't hide her disdain for Marissa. Marissa was a second-year swordsman student. Her grades were not bad, but her background was too low. She had always been an inconspicuous person in their dorm. Of the 4 people in their dorm, the other 2 girls were in the same class and had known each other since they were young. As soon as they entered the dorm, they banded together and tried to suppress Pamela and Marissa, wanting to take control of the dorm. How could Pamela let them succeed? She could only unwillingly team up with the powerless Marissa to resist the 2 girls. Only then did the dorm not become the 2 girls' world. If it wasn't for the fact that Marissa was still useful, why would she, a noble lady, be friends with a commoner? I told you a long time ago not to underestimate anyone. Although Marissa's background is a bit low, she's easy to control. Who knows, we might have a use for her in the future. Algernon smiled faintly, his gaze deep and distant. Chapter 469. If it wasn't for the fact that Melissa was still useful, why would a noble lady befriend a commoner? I told you a long time ago not to underestimate anyone. Although this Marissa's background is a bit low, she's easy to control. Who knows, we might have a use for her in the future. Algernon faintly smiled, his gaze deep and distant. What can a commoner like her do to us? Penmilla said without a care. Who knows? Maybe that day will come. Even if that day doesn't come, we won't lose anything. Algernon didn't care about a commoner. The brother and sister only knew that the conversation and images in the tent would not be leaked out, so they were at ease and dared to say these words here. However, they did not expect that accidents would happen. Unbeknownst to the Algernon siblings, a small sapphire earring was hidden under the quilt without attracting anyone's attention. Outside the tent, Melissa, with her other earring in her ear, seemed to be talking casually with one of Algernon's men. The two boys didn't realize that the quiet and shy girl in front of them was actually multitasking. She was eavesdropping on the siblings' conversation while dealing with the two men. The blue earrings weren't normal, but a pair of alchemy items that could be used for long-distance training. Melissa didn't get this pair of earrings from a chest, but instead chose it during the team competition. At that time, she also thought that the earrings might be useful in the first team competition. Unfortunately, in the first team competition, she was unlucky and encountered a very weak team, so the earrings didn't have much of a chance to be used. But in the individual competition, the earrings showed their usefulness. Melissa came from a poor family. She was only the daughter of a hunter. This kind of background couldn't be any lower than that of a Notre Dame du Starlight. She was probably only a little better than an orphan. During the dorm allocation, she was assigned to the same dorm as 3 other noble ladies. The 3 noble ladies didn't want to submit to each other and wanted to be the boss of the dorm. The first 2 to join forces were the other 2 girls. They knew each other since they were young and were students of the same department, so their backgrounds were similar. Pamela had no choice but to pull in a commoner like herself to deal with the other 2. Melissa knew that it was impossible for her to stay out of this, so she agreed. From then on, Pamela treated her like a servant, always showing off her superiority in front of her. Pamela's pitiful face was disgusting. She seemed to have forgotten that she, Melissa, had never taken the initiative to rely on her. It was Pamela who had sought her out to form an alliance. Although Pamela wasn't a good person and was unruly and willful, she was still quite generous. Following Pamela around, she would occasionally get some things that Pamela would let slip through her fingers. In addition, with Pamela as her backer, her days were much better. After following Pamela, she got to know Pamela's brother. He was a man who always had a kind face and was polite to everyone. She knew that this man was not as gentle and considerate as he appeared to be. This man was much scarier than the brainless Pamela. She was afraid of this man and was worried that one day she would be schemed against by this brother and sister pair. This was because the people Algernon interacted with were all useful people, and she didn't want to become a pawn in their hands. Knowing their plans, Melissa let out a sigh of relief. She didn't want to offend this brother and sister pair, nor did she want to become a pawn in their hands. As a commoner, she had always been good at patience. She would think of a way to break free from this brother and sister pair. Although it would take a long time, she was willing to wait. In the middle of the night, Fengwu suddenly woke up from her dream. The wind carried a trace of blood and killing intent. Something was wrong. She threw off the blanket and put on her clothes before quickly running out of the tent. Imogue was holding his sword and keeping watch. She ran in front of Imogue. "Something's coming," Fengwu said. "How far?" Imogue's face darkened. He didn't doubt Fengwu's words. He believed that this mysterious girl wouldn't make a mistake. "Not far," Fengwu said expressionlessly. "Pack up and leave." Imogue made a prompt decision. The two put away their tent. Before leaving, they notified Algernon's men. No matter what, there wasn't any conflict between them and Renai, so notifying them could be considered a show of respect for being from the same school. Imogue's good intentions didn't necessarily lead to a good outcome. After hearing Imogue's words, Algernon's 2 subordinates didn't think much of it, but they still went to inform their boss. After hearing this, Algernon pondered for a moment. He wasn't sure if he should listen to Imogue. They were rivals, so Imogue had no reason to inform them of this. Could it be that he had set up a trap to attack the 5 of them? Imogue, you're thinking too much. The smarter a person was, the more they thought and the more powerful their imaginations were. There were too many things to consider, so he couldn't make up his mind. On the other hand, Pamela didn't think much of it. "Brother, do you really believe what that guy said? He's just a second year. What could he possibly know? I think he said that to trick us. Brother, be careful of traps." Pamela didn't really think that much, But because Fengwu and Imogue hadn't given her any face during the day, she had been guessing their thoughts in the direction of evil. While Algernon was still hesitating, Fengwu and Imogue had already jumped onto little Alpaca's back and were running quickly through the desert. This was the first time Ajur had ridden on little Alpaca's back. Little Alpaca didn't have a good impression of males. It was a cute little girl, so how could it let a man ride it? However, this was a crucial moment for them to escape. Without little Alpaca's help, it wouldn't be easy for them to escape. A large pack of wolves was approaching from all directions. They were constantly moving toward the place where they had set up camp. The bloody and murderous aura that Fengwu had smelled earlier came from those guys. If not for the fact that Fengwu had grown up in the mountains, she wouldn't have been able to smell anything different in the air. Little Alpaca also realized that something wasn't right. Only then did it agree to bring along this useless male along. It even made an exception and allowed Imogue and Fengwu to ride on its back to escape for their lives. Fengwu and Imogue rode away on their alpacas. Algernon wasn't so lucky. When they saw a large pack of wolves surrounding them, Pamela was scared out of her wits. Chapter 470. The brother and sister duo regretted not listening to Imogue's warning and leaving quickly. Fortunately, although they didn't leave this place, they were still afraid that something would happen and had been on guard all along. That was why they had immediately discovered the wolf pack when it had surrounded them. The demonic wolves around them were all rank 1 demonic beasts. These rank 1 demonic beasts were nothing to Algernon and the others. They were just the lowest level of demonic beasts, and they could kill many with a single slash. But now, they were all ordinary people. Their constitution and element were better than ordinary people, so they had no advantage against these demonic beasts. The wolves surrounded them. Night was a magical beast's paradise. They would appear from time to kill the contestants, increasing the difficulty of the competition and bringing disaster to the contestants. Huff, huff, huff. Marisa held her sword and ran wildly. Just now, she had led Panmilla to escape, but Panmilla had pushed her into the pack of wolves in order to save her own life. If it weren't for the fact that the wolves seemed to be more interested in Panmilla, she wouldn't have survived and would have been immediately sent out of the competition grounds. Panmilla was bitten to death by the wolves before she could run more than a few steps. She used the knockout powder she chose during the first round of the competition to knock out the wolves that attacked her and immediately ran in another direction. She didn't dare to stop. If not for the knockout powder in her hand, she would have been bitten to death by the wolves long ago. Yes, Panmilla died. She didn't feel anything special in her heart, only a slight sigh of relief. She had long wanted to get rid of the siblings, but with her weak strength, it was easier said than done to get rid of Panmilla, who had the backing of one of the top 10 powerhouses. This time, Panmilla's selfish decision to push her into the wolf pack gave her an honorable reason to leave. Therefore, being pushed into the wolf pack wasn't a bad thing. To her, it was an opportunity. She lived well and didn't suffer any losses. She didn't know how long she ran. Finally, when the first ray of sunlight fell, she knew that she had succeeded. She had survived. She wanted to find a place to rest. Not far away, there was a messy stone forest. She gritted her teeth and walked in. Fengwu and Imogue, with the help of little sister Alpaca, successfully escaped the wolves' pursuit. At this moment, the two were hiding under a large stone to rest. Unexpectedly, not long after the two of them fell asleep, someone came. The newcomer was Marisa. She had not expected to bump into Fengwu and Zhaofei again. Fengwu. Marisa looked at Fengwu and then at Fengwu. She wasn't sure if Fengwu still recognized her. She had been in the same team as her during the entrance exam. Ever since she entered the school, she had heard many rumors about Fengwu. Most of these rumors were negative, and she could not imagine what she would do if it happened to her. However, Fengwu did not seem to be affected at all. She would often be surrounded by 1 or 2 friends as she walked around the school grounds. Even when faced with the criticism of others, she was calm and unafraid, which made Melissa admire her very much. If only she was so strong, that would be good, she often thought regretfully. She did not want to talk to Fengwu, nor did she want to talk to her because they had been in the same team. They were not familiar with each other in the first place, so there was no need for her to go up to her. She had thought that she would not have any more interactions with Fengwu, but unexpectedly, they met again. Fengwu did not seem to remember her. She felt a little disappointed, but she also felt that it was natural. It had been more than a year, so it was normal for her to forget. Even though she knew, she still felt a trace of regret. Marissa? Fengwu asked uncertainly. When she first saw Marissa yesterday, she felt that she was familiar. After a night, she finally remembered. The person she met was one of the people she had been in the same team with when she first entered the virtual dimension. Even though they had been in the same team, Fengwu was not sure if it was the Marissa in her memory because they had not seen each other for a long time. In Fengwu's memory, Mei Lisha was a girl who had low self-esteem and was a little restrained. However, the person standing in front of her now no longer had that self-abased and restrained look. Although she didn't become confident and arrogant, her temperament had changed to a certain extent. This was why Fengwu couldn't be sure if it was her. "You still remember me?" Marissa widened her eyes in surprise. "Yes, I remember. We were in the same team." Fengwu nodded affirmatively. Her question meant that she admitted that she was Marissa. "You're injured." Imogue was not as cautious when he saw that she was not an enemy, but he did not let his guard down. He noticed the wound on Marissa's arm. There was a row of teeth marks. It was obvious that she had been injured by a fierce beast. It reminded him of the pack of wolves that had tried to kill them last night. "It's nothing, just a superficial wound." Marissa was not a delicate girl, so she did not care about a wound like this that was not fatal. She found a place to sit down and took out the medicine she needed from her dimensional storage. She dipped a handkerchief in water, cleaned the wound, and poured the powder into it. Marissa's forehead was covered in cold sweat, but she did not make a sound. Imogue had a good impression of her because of this rare display of strength in a woman. Marissa had escaped death, but Panmilla was standing outside in a daze. She could not believe that she had failed. She had actually died. She left the resurrection area in low spirits. However, she noticed that the people around her were looking at her strangely. So it's her. She deserved it. She actually pushed her companion into a pack of wolves. This kind of person is too evil. Good thing she didn't pass the competition. The heavens must be watching her lose. Isn't that right? She's Algernon's little sister. I don't understand how a good person like Algernon could have such a selfish and evil little sister. If she was my little sister, I would have cut off all ties with her immediately. I don't want to be screwed over by my own sister. So she's Panmilla. I never would have thought that there would be such a black sheep in our noble family. She's always so arrogant. I thought she had some kind of ability. I didn't expect her to be this kind of trash. When I get married in the future, I'll definitely tell my family that I can't have a woman like Panmilla. I don't want a wife with such evil thoughts. The students of the same school were pointing and whispering, causing Pamela's face to turn as white as a sheet of paper. She remembered that the scene of the competition was to be transmitted to the holographic screen, but she had actually forgotten about it. Chapter 471. As the older brother, Algernon had no idea what had happened to Pamela because he had been lucky enough to escape. However, his two subordinates were not as lucky and had both died under the wolf's claws. None of this had anything to do with Fengwu and the others. After a sleepless night, Fengwu and the other two slept in the stone forest. Although the heat during the day made them feel stuffy and uncomfortable, in terms of safety, it was actually safer during the day than at night. Melissa applied some medicine to her wounds and rested enough. She looked much more spirited. After chatting with Melissa, Imogue found out that she had the ability to identify herbs and concoct medicine. Many of the herbs on Melissa's body were made by her. In fact, Melissa was definitely a genius in concocting medicine. However, her family's financial situation was not good. Learning to concoct medicine required a large amount of money, and alchemists needed a lot of money in the early stages. Melissa was only the daughter of a small hunter family. Even her school fees had been saved for more than 10 years. How could she have the money to study alchemy? Melissa was also really talented. She had learned a few simple prescriptions as a hunter's daughter and improved a few good ones. After coming to Notre Dame du Starlight, she chose to study alchemy as an elective. In terms of concocting medicine, Melissa had worked hard and was better than most of her peers. This was because she had spent most of her time practicing swordsmanship. If she had entered the alchemy department from the beginning, it would have produced another dazzling genius. Because of Melissa's ability to concoct medicine, Imogue did not object to her joining. After all, Melissa was someone Fengwu knew, so there was nothing wrong with her joining. However, the main reason he allowed Melissa to join was because he knew that with Melissa's strength, she would not be able to do anything to him and Fengwu. With Marissa's help, many things became a lot more convenient. Marissa also knew why Imogue had agreed to let her join, so along the way, she would collect all the useful herbs she saw. When night fell, she would use those herbs to refine medicinal powder. The reason why she didn't refine the potions was because she didn't have the specialized equipment required for refining potions. This set of equipment was something she had chosen during her first group mission. She was still young, so she didn't want to be a burden and be despised. She had to show her value. Unfortunately, they didn't even have the chance to use these things before their team was completely wiped out. The members of the Phoenix Dance Alliance had grown to 3, but their speed was definitely not fast. From the light screen outside, it could be seen that Fengwu and the others were already lagging behind for a while. They were already quite a distance away from the vanguard. The peaceful journey had only lasted for 3 days. These contestants didn't know that they were about to face a new challenge, one that would eliminate most of them. Vice Principal, may I ask if there is any special meaning to this vote? Sandstorm mode, battle mode, and quicksand trap mode. What are the differences between these 3 modes? Why are the students allowed to choose one of these 3 modes? Tamantia turned to look at the vice principal. At the same time, in the spacious plaza, besides the teachers and students who were working, 3 options had appeared beside everyone. These 3 options were sandstorm mode, battle mode, and quicksand trap mode. These 3 modes had suddenly appeared in front of the students, but most of them were still confused. This was why Tamantia had asked this question. The vice principal coughed reservedly, then smiled amiably. Unfortunately, his white beard made it impossible to tell whether he was amiable or not. These 3 modes are the tests they will encounter in the second desert stage. Every time they enter a new map, there will be a new test waiting for them. The difficulty will only increase. Then, do they have to go through all 3 modes? They can only choose one mode. Those who can't pass will be eliminated immediately. The other 2 modes that are not chosen will not appear in future competitions. The vice principal shook his head, his aged voice carrying a hint of joy. So, vice principal, you're looking forward to the next contestant's misfortune? Everyone was speechless. However, when they thought about how they could personally choose the mode that the contestants were going to experience, they felt very excited. Next, Tamantia asked the vice principal to introduce the 3 modes. Unfortunately, the vice principal was very tight-lipped this time and refused to say anything. He only asked everyone to choose based on their feelings. The difficulty of these 3 modes was different. Even the simplest mode was not easy. Therefore, no matter which mode they chose, the contestants would face a huge challenge. Alright, the final choices of the students have been made. Let's see which mode the contestants will enter. Tamantia opened the paper that recorded the final choices. Battle mode. 40% of the students have chosen this mode. Therefore, the next mode that the contestants will experience is the battle mode, Tamantia said excitedly on the stage. The audience below the stage was somewhat confused. Bro, what did you choose? Someone started chatting below the stage. Of course, it's the quicksand trap. I chose the battle mode. I feel that the difficulty is very high just from the name. Me too. I chose the sandstorm mode. I felt that I didn't understand the other 2, so I chose the only mode that I could understand. The contestants in the venue were naturally unaware of the huge commotion outside the stage. It was currently night in the competition venue. The desert at night was the most dangerous. Not only did the temperature drop, but all kinds of magical beasts would also come out to wander. If one was not careful, they would be bitten to death. After a few days of recuperation, Marissa's wounds were completely healed. Fortunately, this was the virtual world, so any injury would heal very quickly. In fact, after applying medicine, Marissa's wounds were completely healed in just a day. Now, They were rushing according to the map, but they had not met a single person in the past few days. This was very strange. Emogue studied the map for a long time. Although there were several paths to the next scene, the path that they had chosen would not be so desolate. After all, this was the safest and fastest path that Emogue had analyzed. How could they not have met a single person? If Emogue came from the future, he would definitely shout that this was illogical. Chapter 472. But soon, Emogue didn't have time to think about why he hadn't met anyone else, because just then, an unfamiliar voice rang out in the sky. All contestants, please pay attention. The Battle Royale mode will be activated in half an hour. In this mode, the only thing the contestants have to do is to survive until the next morning. Those who survive will be able to continue the next half of the competition, and the top 10 contestants in the Battle Royale mode will have a chance to draw a prize. This lottery will be very important to your upcoming competition, so you must work hard and strive to be in the top 10. End of notice. The voice disappeared, but all the competitors were on high alert. Battle Royale mode? What the hell was that? Pack up and prepare for battle, Emogue immediately said. He knew this competition wouldn't be so simple. After putting away the tents, everyone took out their weapons and stood on guard. Not far from Phoenix's group was the corpse of a large magical beast. The corpse had already been reduced to white bones, and it was unknown how long it had been there. Emogue directly led Fengwu and Melissa into the huge pile of bones. The bones were very large and covered the three of them, making it impossible for anyone outside to see them. Half an hour quickly passed. Whether it was the competitors or the audience, everyone was curious about the Battle Royale mode. Finally, amidst everyone's doubts, the Battle Royale mode was activated. Kill, roar, 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 kill, kill, kill. When half an hour had passed, everyone suddenly heard the sound of Battle Royale mode being activated. Then, they heard a series of angry roars filled with murderous intent and bloodthirsty aura. At this moment, the entire desert became lively. A large number of zombies and low-level magical beasts appeared out of nowhere and rampaged in the desert. Their eyes were glowing red, and their mouths were constantly howling. That soaring murderous aura was frightening to look at. Emogue sucked in a breath. Too scary. Melissa covered her mouth, not daring to make a sound. She was afraid of attracting the attention of those things outside. So many. Fengwu frowned. There were so many monsters outside. What should they do? Fortunately, they had the foresight to find such a place to hide. This skeleton still had the original aura of the magic beast, so the monsters outside couldn't find them for a while. However, they didn't dare to make a sound, afraid that they would be discovered. Fengwu obediently hid. She closed her mouth and did not speak. She could not feel any life aura from those things outside. Little Sister Alpaca stood beside Fengwu and secretly looked at the situation outside. He really wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it. Now that he saw it, he was shocked. There were so many monsters. Were they trying to scare him to death? The monsters outside appeared in groups. These things did not seem to be intelligent. They were only given the instinct to kill. Fengwu was a little disappointed. If only they had the ability to think, she could be friends with them and not be afraid. Main God. Dream on. I'm guarding against you. So scary. So scary. Little Sister Alpaca was so scared that she shrank into Fengwu's arms. On the screen outside the arena, a large number of monsters were placed around the contestants. These monsters began to chase after the contestants as soon as they saw them. Those who were lucky, like Fengwu and the others, found a place to hide and were not discovered for a while. Those who were unlucky became the targets of these monsters as soon as they appeared and died miserably. On the field, Mingxi and Tianya were one of the few people walking at the front of the group. These people who walked in front of everyone all chose the more difficult path, but also the shortest path. Mingxi and Tianya had chosen the most difficult path. Even during the day, one or two powerful demonic beasts would occasionally block their path. If Mingxi and Tianya weren't abnormally strong experts, they would have long since been slapped to death by the demonic beasts along the way. The two hid in the desert before the Battle Royale mode was activated. Now that Ming-Shi was alert enough to sprinkle some powder to conceal their presence, they were not discovered by the monsters as soon as they appeared. Irene immediately hid in a big box. She had obtained the box by opening it. Hiding in the box would not only make her immune to all damage, but also isolate her scent. The box was also a unique item. However, when Irene opened it, she felt it was useless. It would have been better to give her a magic equipment that could increase her speed or increase her attack. Giving her such a box, was she supposed to hide in the box if she didn't want to? Originally, Irene refused to hide in the box. However, she knew what was going on with the Battle Royale mode. When there was nothing around her that could hide her, she immediately thought of the box that she had forgotten about. She immediately hid in it without hesitation. She knew how terrifying the Battle Royale mode was. It was safer to hide first. On the other side, Ziqing brought Eve to hide behind two big rocks. He carefully erased their scent. The demon wolf was a monster. For safety's sake, Ziqing also erased its scent. When the Battle Royale mode was activated, Ziqing and Eve saw the situation outside. The two of them were glad that their quick-wittedness had saved them this time. If they were stupid enough to hold their weapons and wait for the battle, they would have been surrounded by the monsters by now. What was unexpected was Zhuan, the girl who just became enemies with Fengwu. Zhuan was wearing a red cloak and disappeared in front of everyone. This cloak was also a unique item. It had the function of invisibility and concealing aura. Once she wore the cloak, no matter what, no one would be able to discover her. However, this cloak was not omnipotent. Although she could not be discovered, she could not be attacked and also could not be attacked. Once she took the initiative to attack or was hit by someone while wearing the cloak, the invisibility function would automatically lose effect. The cloak's owner would immediately appear in front of others. Therefore, the cloak could only hide her from others, but it could not protect her. It was unlike Irene's box, which had the function of being immune to all attacks. With the invisibility cloak, June was completely fine. She carefully avoided all the monsters and zombies. She was very careful and did not dare to touch anything. Those who didn't get the special items and didn't react in time weren't so lucky. On the screen, a large number of contestants were killed by these magical beasts and died tragically. Only a few people escaped, but even if they escaped, it wasn't necessarily safe. There were magical beasts and zombies everywhere, and if they weren't careful, they would still die. Chapter 473. The night brought endless slaughter. Screams filled the sky as countless contestants lost their qualifications to participate in the competition under the claws and jaws of the monsters. Outside the contestants' respawn area, a large number of contestants would appear from time to time. At this time, only half of the contestants were left, and the number was still decreasing. When the monsters appeared, a large leaderboard appeared beside the screen. The names of the contestants and the number of monsters they killed appeared on the leaderboard. The leaderboard was constantly changing, but the difference between the rankings wasn't large. Until now, there had yet to be any players that would make people's eyes light up. The number of monsters on the leaderboard wasn't very high. Normally, it would be around 10. Fengwu rubbed her stomach, a sad expression on her face. "I'm hungry." Imogue and Marisa stood motionless beside Fengwu, as if they were facing a great enemy. The monsters weren't as dense as before. Instead, they spread out in all directions. There weren't as many monsters guarding Imogue's bones as before. Most of them had already left. Of course, they wouldn't go too far. Similarly, a leaderboard appeared above the arena. The leaderboard was glittering with a golden light. Amidst the golden light, the names of the participants and the number of monsters they had killed jumped up and down. The competition was intense. Everyone understood that the top 10 of the Great Battle Royale was most likely calculated based on this leaderboard. If they wanted to get into the top 10, they would have to continuously kill monsters. Moreover, they would have to kill more monsters than anyone else. Kill our way out? Marisa asked with uncertainty. She knew her own strength. With so many seniors in front of her, it was impossible for her to get into the top 10. Her goal was to survive until the end of the Battle Royale. As long as she could survive until the end of the Battle Royale, she would have made a name for herself in the eyes of Star Hall. If she wanted to join Star Hall in the future, this competition would be a good bargaining chip. Imogue thought for a few seconds before nodding. He wanted to fight for a spot in the top 10. Although his chances of success were very low, so low that it was practically impossible, there was still Fengwu. He knew how strong Fengwu was. Perhaps Fengwu could do it. With that in mind, Imogue nodded in agreement. Taking a step back, even if he and Fengwu did not succeed, it did not matter. There was a place they could retreat to, and their lives would not be in danger. Xiao Wu, want to go kill some monsters? Imogue turned to ask Fengwu. Hungry? Fengwu blinked and looked up at him. I'll eat after killing the monsters? He asked uncertainly. Fengwu nodded in agreement. Thus, the girl leaped out from her hiding place with her sword in hand and began to kill in all directions. Being able to enter the graduating class was already a proof of their strength. Although this was a rare opportunity, there weren't many 7th grade contestants. Only a few people came in to play out of boredom. Most of them stayed outside to support the teacher's work, or simply to be spectators. The competition for points continued. Although the number of people who chose to fight wasn't small, even more people chose to seek stability. They chose to hide in a relatively safe place, only wanting to persevere until morning so that they could continue participating in the competition. Regardless of what others thought, Fengwu buried herself in killing monsters without hesitation. Fengwu was a little expressionless loli who liked cute little things. She had no love for these monsters that didn't have the ability to think, so she didn't feel any psychological burden when killing monsters. Moreover, Fengwu had spirit spring water, a good item that could relieve fatigue. When killing monsters, Fengwu also gave a bit of spirit spring water to Imogue. With the support of Fengwu's spirit spring water, although Imogue didn't squeeze into the top 10, he still managed to achieve a good result. Half an hour before dawn, a silver light suddenly shot out from the horizon, and the ground changed. The places that could be used as cover were all gone, and everyone was exposed to the monster. The people who originally chose to seek stability paled. They hurriedly picked up their weapons and started fighting. Chapter 474. Immerse's reaction was pretty good. Once she realized that the bones around her had disappeared, she immediately pulled out her sword to protect herself. Alpaca Sister also scratched the ground with her hooves. Fortunately, most of the monsters around them had been cleared, so they didn't encounter any danger. Eve, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. She was hiding in a corner and thought that she was safe, so she didn't take any precautions. Even Ziqing didn't expect this to happen, so Ziqing, who was busy killing monsters, didn't think that the objects she was hiding in would disappear. Since she didn't think about it, she naturally didn't notice Eve's safety beforehand. The result was that Eve only had time to scream before her stomach was torn open by the monsters. After a blood-curdling scream, Eve received her lunchbox just like that. Ziqing wanted to save her, but it was too late. She was a bit far from Eve, so she couldn't reach her in time. The final battle mode had been activated. Everything that could be used as a hiding place was taken away by the Lord God, and the contestants had to survive in the last half an hour. The weak mage students wanted to cry. They were just weak mages with weak health. Why did they have to fight these monsters with weapons? Woo-woo. This competition isn't fair. It's not fair. They collectively protested. This is too unfair. Our mage students have weak health, and they actually want us to kill monsters with the Swordmaster students. What kind of justice is this? This is blatant favoritism. Why do we mage students have to kill monsters like the Swordmaster students? We can't even use magic. How can we kill monsters? The two mage students who had just been eliminated from the competition started complaining to their friends as soon as they came out of the revival area. They felt that the school was biased towards the Swordmaster students. If they weren't biased, why would they come up with this idea? The mage and Swordmaster students sealed their abilities and sent them to the competition. The Swordmaster students were all as strong as magical beasts. Even if they didn't have battle chi, they could still survive with their stupid strength. What about the mage students? They didn't have any strength or stamina, but they had to do the same thing as the Swordmaster students. They couldn't accept it. He refused to accept it. For a moment, all kinds of dissatisfied voices rang out outside the arena. The loudest voice came from the mage department. When facing the swordmaster department, they had all kinds of feelings of superiority. To be able to become a mage was an existence that was like being favored by the heavens. On the other hand, the people from the swordmaster department were just a bunch of people who had no talent in magic and could only learn fighting aura, who didn't know that on this continent, mages were the most respected. Most of the famous alchemists and pharmacists studied magic. There were very few master pharmacists and master alchemists among the swordmasters. Because they were gifted with talents that most people did not have, the students of the mage school had always been proud. They always felt that they were nobler than the students of the other schools and that their future achievements would definitely be higher than those of the other schools. But now, they were being trampled under the feet of the swordmaster department. Most of the people left on the field were from the swordmaster department. As for the mage department, only a few of them were able to survive. These people were all standing at the top of the Notre Dame du Starlight. Those with average strength had already been eliminated. This was only the second scene, and so many people had already been eliminated. The later scenes would only get more and more people eliminated. This made the people who were left on the field take the following matches seriously. Half an hour passed by quickly. The only one who managed to survive the night was June, who did not kill any monsters. June relied on her powerful equipment. This night, she was definitely the most relaxed one. The invisibility cloak helped her a lot. Although the Lord God had already taken away all the concealment items, he wouldn't touch the contestants' own items. This invisibility cloak was the only item that June had gotten from the chest, so naturally, it was allowed to stay on the field. Among all the people left on the field, she was the only one with 0 points. Although the word 0 didn't look good, June didn't complain. As long as she could stay until the end, so be it. That invisibility cloak is too strong. How could it drop such a cheat-like item? Someone outside the field noticed June and her invisibility cloak and said unhappily, "Isn't that so? She can't just walk all the way to the end with the invisibility cloak. That's too unfair to the other contestants." That's right. It's not fair, not fair. Some people started to question whether the invisibility cloak should be counted as a contestant's item. This item was too cheat-like and unfair to the others. Some people felt that luck was also a kind of strength. She was the only one who got the invisibility cloak out of so many people. Didn't they say that her luck was good? During the entrance exam, luck was also counted as part of the exam. Therefore, it was reasonable for June to get the invisibility cloak. The people on both sides were arguing fiercely. On the stage, Tamancha was also asking the same question. Vice Principal, there are many people in the audience who are questioning whether the invisibility cloak should be counted as an item. The invisibility cloak's ability is too strong. The students are very concerned about whether, as long as they wear the invisibility cloak, they can walk all the way to the end without worrying about being chased by monsters or other dangers. Actually, although the invisibility cloak seems to be very advantageous in the competition, it won't be very useful in the later stages of the competition. Therefore, everyone's worries are unnecessary. When the school chose to put the invisibility cloak in the contestants' items, they had already thought of all kinds of possibilities and made countermeasures to deal with these possibilities. We definitely won't let someone win all the way just because they got a powerful item. This competition is very serious. We won't allow such a possibility to exist. The vice principal stroked his beard seriously. He looked very dignified when he was so serious. These students must be admiring this great vice principal in their hearts. Everyone below the stage. Principal, we want to report that the vice principal is acting cool again. When the audience found out that the invisibility cloak wouldn't be very useful in the later stages of the competition, they were finally relieved. As long as the competition was fair, it was fine. Everyone expressed their trust in the vice principal's words. Although the vice principal was often crazy and unreliable, he won't lie when it came to important matters. Of course, it was hard to say for small matters. The whole school knew that the vice principal was narrow-minded. Many people who offended the vice principal were very miserable because of many small matters. In the arena, when the first ray of sunlight appeared in the sky, everyone felt like they had just survived a disaster. Oh my God! They almost thought that they were going to die here. Most of the guys almost shed tears. The girls also heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone was exhausted from the night. They couldn't remember how many monsters they had killed or how many times they had been scratched by these monsters. Right now, they only felt that their bodies didn't belong to them anymore. Chapter 475. A battle royale had actually caused 70 to 80% of the contestants on the field to disappear. Those who survived were all experts with both strength and luck. Of course, there were also those who were lucky enough to survive, but these people were very rare, less than 5 of them. After the last refresh of the leaderboard, the points had completely stabilized. The first place on the leaderboard was Skycliff with 780 points. The second place was Mingxi with 775 points. The third place was a 7th grade senior with 670 points. The 5th place was Fengwu with 620 points. The 10th place was Triple X with 560 points. Killing a monster was worth 5 points. Even Skycliff, who had killed the most monsters, didn't kill more than 200. The top 10 had been determined. Just like the previous rules said, those who got into the top 10 would get a chance to draw a prize. The other contestants were all envious of the top 10 contestants. It was worth mentioning that there were 3 second-grade girls in the top 10. The 3 of them were Fengwu, who was in 1st place and 5th place, Zicheng, who was in 6th place, and Irene, who was in 7th place. The 3 girls were very close to each other in terms of points, with only a few monsters separating them. 3 second-grade girls rushing into the top 10. This was simply impossible in previous years. In the past, it was already amazing to have one dark horse appear at the same time, but this time there were actually 3 dark horses. Moreover, 2 of the 3 dark horses were actually mages. Mages with low health were relatively weak in the early stages. Who would have thought that these 2 girls would actually fight their way into the top 10? The mages outside the field could finally hold their heads high. At least they didn't lose too much face. With 2 dark horses, let's see who would dare to look down on the mages. The Swordmaster students in the same grade as Fengwu were very surprised. No one would have thought that there would be a dark horse among the second-grade Swordmasters. The mages were very proud. It was a pity that the 1st place in the grade, a juror, didn't sign up for the competition. Otherwise, there would definitely be 3 dark horses. Fengwu and the other 2 found a place to sleep under the sun. I forgot to mention that after the match ended, the objects that had disappeared from the arena returned to their original positions. Therefore, Fengwu and the others were able to find a place to rest. They slept for several hours. During the day, everyone was resting. Almost no one used this time to travel. The Fengwu girl was very satisfied to be able to have a good fight. Eating the grilled fish and drinking the fish soup, the Fengwu girl squinted her eyes happily. Finally, she could eat. By the time Imogue woke up, the sky was already dark. Damn, he had slept through the entire day. Just as Imogue was thinking about how to spend the night, Fengwu suddenly threw a pile of things at his feet. Where did you get this? Imogue almost spat out the fish soup in his mouth. His eyes widened as he stared at the wolf meat in front of him. Weren't these wolf corpses the ones they killed? Weren't those corpses taken away by the Lord God? Where did this come from? Imogue thought, dumbfounded. I picked it up. Fengwu looked at Imogue expressionlessly. Picked up? Very good, very strong. The question was, when did she pick it up? Why didn't he see it? Why are you giving it to me? Forgive his lack of imagination, but he really couldn't understand why Fengwu would pick it up. Grill meat, Fengwu said with bright eyes. As she spoke, there seemed to be a suspicious droplet at the corner of her mouth. Imogue was speechless. He didn't seem to have starved her. I'll grill it. Marisa covered her mouth and smiled. She took the wolf meat that Fengwu had thrown out and began to skillfully grill it. Coming from a family of hunters, Marisa's grilling skills were very good. Even though the wolf meat wasn't delicious, it still made people drool. There was too much meat, and Imogue didn't want to let her do it alone, so he helped. They didn't do anything else for the entire night. After the battle, the corpses had clearly disappeared. Where did Fengwu get them? Imogue couldn't understand, so he asked Fengwu curiously. Fengwu tilted her head. I picked them up after killing them. There's too much to fit. Don't tell me you want to pick up all the magical beasts you killed and grill them? Imogue looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Early the next morning, Fengwu's group set off again with a space full of grilled wolf meat. In a faraway country, a young man passed through the gate and walked into a majestic old house. Young Master Xiazhua, you're back. Hello, young Master Xiazhua. Hello, young Master Xiazhua. When the youth appeared, the youths who were passing by immediately stopped to greet him respectfully. Xiazhua nodded calmly and walked into the courtyard he lived in. That must be young Master Xiazhua. He looks so impressive. Look at his aura. He's almost as strong as young Master Caesar. A young man said admiringly. Young Master Xiazhua has finally made a name for himself. He went to the tomb of the sea god and came back as an ice mage. He's a peerless genius. Apart from young Master Caesar, young Master Xiazhua is the strongest in the clan. I wonder if young Master Xiazhua is still looking for servants. I want to sign up. Me too. Me too. Xiazhua was not interested in what was happening in the front courtyard. He walked back to his courtyard alone. In the courtyard, Yuan was instructing the new maidservants to clean the courtyard. Originally, Xiazhua did not have the talent for cultivation, so there were not many maidservants serving him. Ever since Xiazhua's talent changed, his originally quiet courtyard had become completely lively. Many servants who wanted to turn from sparrows to phoenixes wanted to serve Xiazhua, but not many of them were chosen. There was no way the butler would allow anyone with bad intentions to serve Xiazhua. He had chased away those with bad characters and ulterior motives when he was choosing servants. He only kept those who were honest and hardworking. Young Master Xiazhua, you're back. Yuan ran over happily when she saw Xiazhua. I'll go back to my room first. Send my lunch to my room, Xiazhua said, rubbing Yuan's head. Yuan nodded and watched Xiazhua return to his room. Back in his room, Xiazhua went to the window and looked in a certain direction. It's almost time for the wood heart to be born. It's time to get ready. Xiazhua mumbled to himself. His eyes were filled with a complicated yet determined look. The desert wasteland was a place where not even a blade of grass could grow. No plants could grow here, and water was scarce. It was not supposed to be inhabited by humans, yet people kept venturing into the wasteland. Enlu Town was just a small town with a small population. Enlu Town had a population of around 20 to 30,000. Not far from Enlu Town was the desert wasteland. If one wanted to enter the desert wasteland, they had to go through Enlu Town. This Yaoyue, relying on the fact that she was a 7th-year senior and had a family behind her, she didn't like anyone. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to leave a good impression, Ziqing wouldn't have bothered with this woman. What does it have to do with you? Who do you think you are? You're just a burden. I really don't understand why the school agreed to let 3 second-year students join this mission. What are they doing here? Dragging us down. Yaoyue was getting more and more dissatisfied. As she spoke, she glared at Fengwu, who didn't provoke her, and only then did she feel a little better. If you want to leave now, you can leave at any time, the gray-haired man, Mogfelt, said with a gaze as cold as ice. Yaoyue still shut her mouth. She dared to get angry at Ziqing because the 3 of them were only 2nd-year rookies. However, Mogfelt was in the top 10 of the 7th year. His strength wasn't something she could compare to. In front of such a strong person, no matter how dissatisfied Yaoyue was, she could only shut her mouth. That's right, this group of people wasn't just anyone. They were the top 10 chosen from the Extreme Survival Challenge. These 10 people were the 7th year's 10th place Mogfelt, 7th year's Yaoyue, 7th year's Huazhua, 6th year's 1st place Ming Shi, 6th year's 5th place Tang Nuode, 5th year's 1st place Skycliff, 5th year's 2nd place Aunt, and 3 second-year girls, Fengwu, Irene, and Ziqing. These 10 people were all the contestants with the highest overall score in the competition. Among the 10 people, Mingxi was 1st, Skycliff was 2nd, Fengwu and the other 2 girls took up 6, 7, and 8 places. Fengwu was 8th, and Ziqing was 6th. Originally, in the original work, Ziqing's ranking would have been 1st. However, because in the original work, Elena would die in the Tomb of the God of Gods in the 2-world battlefield, Ming Shi didn't participate in this activity. None of the members of their team participated. Without Ming Shi and Skycliff, and because Mogfelt and the other strong people weren't interested in this competition, Ziqing got first place in the original work, and his name shook the whole school. This time, there were too many unexpected factors. Several strong people who shouldn't have appeared. In the competition scene, she couldn't use any of her cheat fingers. This caused Ziqing to only get 6th place. Ziqing himself wasn't too satisfied with this result. However, there were too many strong people in the senior grade who participated. Her influence couldn't be shown at all. It was very difficult to fight for first place. In order to be stable, Ziqing could only choose to stay in the top 10. Irene had the same idea as her. Irene was determined to snatch the heart of wood from the female lead, especially after knowing that the world would be destroyed because of Ziqing. This time, no matter what, she had to snatch it. If she couldn't ascend to the celestial realm before the female lead, wouldn't she only be waiting for death? No matter what, she couldn't do this. She hadn't lived long enough. Yao Yu, who quarreled with him just now, was a very outstanding person among the 7th grade girls. This time, she was lucky to snatch a place at the bottom of the top 10. Seeing that there were 3 2nd grade students who were ranked higher than her, it would be strange if she was in a good mood. When she was in a bad mood, she would want to find trouble. This was why she would often ask people to drag her down. Along the way, Yao Yu would occasionally find trouble with Fengwu and the other two. Of course, her main target wasn't Fengwu, but Irene and Ziqing. She wanted to find trouble with Fengwu, but Fengwu didn't understand. She didn't understand your roundabout taunts. She would brazenly say unpleasant things. She would just look at you expressionlessly until you couldn't continue. She couldn't get any benefits from Fengwu, so she could only set her sights on the other 2 girls. Anyway, no matter what Irene and Ziqing said, Yao Yu would find a topic to find trouble with them. If these 2 girls weren't strong enough, they would have been bullied to the point of crying. Chapter 477. No matter how unwilling Yao Yu was, she could not give anyone face, but she couldn't ignore the Captain Mogfuli. Mogfuli's strength in the 7th grade was much stronger than her. She knew that this time she was able to participate in this special mission. A big reason was because of her good luck. There were many people in the 7th grade who were stronger than her. Those strong people didn't participate in this competition, which gave her the opportunity to participate in this mission. Yao Yu didn't dare to offend Mogfuli, who had a prominent reputation in the 7th grade. Don't look at how she mocked and ridiculed Fengwu and others. It was only because they were young and their strength couldn't surpass her, so she had nothing to fear. There were only 3 rooms, but their group had 10 people. Among these 10 people, there were 6 boys and 4 girls. When they were dividing the rooms, the 6 boys were divided into 2 rooms, and the 4 girls were divided into 1 room. This division was very fair. Originally, there were more people on the boys' side. Although Yao Yu wanted to stay alone, she didn't dare to provoke Mogfuli. She could only agree with this division method with an ugly face. The girls' room wasn't very big. Fortunately, there were 2 beds in this room. 2 people to 1 bed was completely fine. But the problem was, who would share a bed with Yao Yu? I'll sleep on this bed. You 3 will sleep on the other. Yao Yu didn't think about sharing a bed with any of them. She directly laid down on the bed and announced the ownership of the bed under her. Senior Yao Yu, you're too much. Irene couldn't help but slap the table and stood up. I'm the senior. Listen to me or listen to you. Yao Yu looked up and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. She couldn't deal with Mogfuli, but she couldn't deal with these girls. You. Irene still wanted to argue. Unfortunately, Yao Yu didn't pay attention to the 3 of them. She casually took out a romance novel from her space ring and began to read it. She didn't care what Irene was saying at all. Irene was so angry that she almost fainted. What kind of people were these? 7th grade seniors? As seniors, shouldn't they take care of their juniors? What was with all this fighting over beds? Flip's table. Ziqing saw that Irene wanted to rush up and argue with her, so he immediately stopped her and shook his head lightly. Forget it. I'll listen to senior sister. Although Ziqing also felt that Yao Yu was too much, he didn't want to make things difficult for her because of this small matter. Irene also knew that no matter how overboard this Yao Yu was, she was still a 7th-year senior. Going against her would not end well for second-year students like them. Taking a deep breath, Irene decided to endure it for now. If there was a chance, she would definitely make Yayu suffer. What do we do now? Sleeping with the three of us is a little difficult. Irene said, wasn't it difficult? This bed was just an ordinary single bed. It was a little crowded even for 2 people, not to mention 3 people. Even if the 3 of them were all slender young girls, it was still impossible to sleep with 3 people. How about I make a bed on the floor? You and Fengwu can sleep on the bed. Zicheng thought about it and said considerately. Irene snorted disdainfully in her heart. The female lead really didn't forget to show her kindness and magnanimity no matter where. Those who didn't know her true nature would probably be touched by her kindness. Thinking of this, she turned her head to look at Fengwu, who hadn't spoken all this time. After interacting with Fengwu a few times, she also knew that Fengwu's temperament was simple. She was a little worried that Fengwu would be deceived. After looking over, Irene immediately knew that her worries were unnecessary. Fengwu didn't have any thoughts at all. You guys sleep on the bed. I have this. After Fengwu finished speaking, she took out a hammock from her spatial ring. This hammock was bought by Fengwu long ago. Fengwu usually bought things that interested her when she went shopping. Although she bought the most food, she also bought a lot of miscellaneous things. Taking out the hammock from her spatial ring, she tied the hammock to the corner of the room and spread a comfortable blanket over it. This way, it looked even more comfortable than their bed. This bed was only used in ordinary people's homes. Under the bed was a wooden board and a quilt, so the comfort was very limited. Fengwu made her bed, took off her shoes and lay on it to try it out. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Just like that, the bed separation incident passed. At least it didn't cause any big disputes. Irene walked out of the room and found a more secluded place to contact Shozo. Knowing that Shozo had already arrived, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It had been more than 10 days since the end of the individual competition. 15 days ago, when the final results of the individual competition were released, many people couldn't believe it. How did the 3 girls stand out in front of so many seniors? If it wasn't for the fact that the entire process was broadcasted outside the arena, no one would believe that the 3 girls had done something that many seniors couldn't do. After the competition ended, they were brought together to the Vice Dean's office, and the Vice Dean personally issued this mission. The school wanted them to enter the desert wasteland and find the sealed heart of wood. Legend had it that 1,000 years ago, the desert wasteland was once a beautiful grassland. However, for some unknown reason, the grassland became a desert, and no plants could grow there anymore. No one knew that this grassland, which was originally full of vitality, was also the birthplace of the heart of wood. Chapter 478. Because of these reasons, the Notre Dame du Starlight only sent a few of them over and didn't send a more powerful teacher. As for the Star Hall, it was said that there were already people rushing over, but those people wouldn't intervene in this fight. After reading the original work, she certainly knew that the Notre Dame du Starlight wanted to get the heart of wood. She didn't want to have any ambition. She just wanted to use the power of the heart of wood to change the desert wasteland's environment and return it to its previous state. Perhaps this process would be very slow, but if it succeeded, it would definitely benefit the people. Unfortunately, the female lead in the original work obtained the heart of wood and made it form a contract. Once the heart of wood formed a contract with a human, of course, it was impossible to put it back in the desert wasteland, so the school's plan couldn't be realized. With so many variables in this life, she didn't believe that Zicheng's female lead aura would still be so invincible. After a simple dinner, Fengwu and the others went to bed early. The next day, everyone began to buy the supplies they needed to enter the desert. From food to daily necessities, there would be no place for them to replenish after entering the desert, so of course, they had to buy it all at once. The townspeople actually loved and hated the sudden appearance of outsiders. These outsiders contributed to the town's economic development, but also decreased the town's safety by a lot. Recently, there were people fighting every 2 to 3 days, and some unscrupulous adventurers openly molested women on the streets. In a short time, The whole town was filled with complaints. The people here couldn't wait for these adventurers to disappear as soon as possible. If they could enter and never come out, that would be even better. A strange treasure was about to appear in the desert wasteland, but it was just a guess and a rumor. No one could confirm this point, so most of the people who came here were still in a wait-and-see state. Although some people had already entered the desert, more people still stayed in the town. They might want to stay for a few more days, or they might want to wait for the news to be confirmed before entering the desert wasteland. In short, no matter what these people were planning, with so many adventurers with different personalities staying here, it was a big trouble for the town's residents. Although the adventurers would not kill ordinary people at will, they would be bullied from time to time, which made it difficult for the residents here to have a good impression of the adventurers. In just a short period of time, some of the better-looking girls had already hidden in their own houses and wouldn't go out easily. Now, the ones walking outside were all ordinary-looking women. The girls didn't dare to rashly go out with their fellow disciples. The townspeople already had a certain degree of fear and dissatisfaction with the adventurers. It was no wonder that Fengwu and the others couldn't get any information when they entered the town yesterday. On the third day, the group of 10 entered the desert on foot. There were no signs of life in this desert. This was a land of death that no one would set foot in. Anyone who wanted to enter this desert could only choose to walk. No one knew why, but as long as they were living creatures, they didn't want to set foot in this desert. It was as if there was something terrifying inside. It was said that a few days ago, there was a soldier who wanted to ride his horse in, but the horse didn't move at all. It had a frightened look on its face and refused to go in no matter what. Even when it was almost beaten to death, it didn't want to move an inch. This happened many times, and in the end, everyone had no choice but to obediently walk in. In the desert wasteland, there was only endless yellow sand and the scorching sun. There were no creatures to be seen. Stepping on this land, the 10 people instantly felt a suffocating pressure. There was also a kind of bone-chilling fear. It was as if there was a man-eating monster in front of them, and this monster was waiting to swallow them all. Fengwu looked at the endless yellow sand and touched the Rue beast baby on her old back. Her eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. This place is so strange. As soon as I walked in, I felt like I stepped into the gates of hell. Donovan said as he flicked his fingers. Indeed, it is not a good place. Huozhua nodded and responded. Everyone be careful. This place is not simple. Mojiofri said expressionlessly. Everyone's hearts were heavy. They all felt that this mission would not be so easy to complete. But thinking about it, for this mission, the school even held some kind of extreme survival challenge. Making such a big scene, it would be strange if the mission was simple. This place has evil energy. Moreover, the evil energy has formed clouds. Everyone be careful not to be disturbed by the evil energy. Yao Yu's face was ugly as she looked into the distance. Is it an undead? Mojiofri frowned and asked. It could be, or it could be something else. We have to wait until we see it to know. Yao Yu said. Irene and Ziqing had a new level of respect for Yao Yu. They originally thought that she would only find trouble with them and put on the airs of a senior. They didn't expect her to have some ability. Yao Yu was a very rare necromancer in the school. Even in Notre Dame du Starlight, there were not many necromancers. Although they were all students of the mage department, they were all specially guided by specialized teachers. In the school, necromancers were the most mysterious existences. Although Yao Yu's character was not that good, she was definitely a strong one among necromancers. This was also the reason why she was able to successfully obtain a place among so many people. With Yao Yu's reminder, everyone carefully walked towards the place marked on the map. Before leaving Notre Dame du Starlight, the school gave them a map. This map recorded the place where the Heart of Wood was sealed. What they had to do was to bring the Heart of Wood back to the school and hand it over to the Vice-Dean. Rushing from here to the sealed place was not something that could be done in a day or two. Without coming to the desert wasteland, one wouldn't know how big this place was. Walking for 1 or 2 years might not be enough to finish. And the sealed place was in a secret place in the desert wasteland. If they wanted to go there, they would have to walk for at least 3 months in this place to be able to reach it. During these 3 months, they couldn't get lost. Once they got lost, it wouldn't be something that could be done in 3 months. The day in the desert was very long. They walked for a long time before ushering in the night. At night, the temperature dropped to -10 degrees. The cold wind blew on people's body, making them feel as if their whole body was about to be frozen. Fortunately, this was not the virtual world arena. No one had their Do Chi and magic sealed. With the protection of Do Chi and magic, they didn't feel that unbearable. However, everyone still wore heavy coats. Since they couldn't hurry at night, everyone had to find a place to camp. They brought a lot of food and drink here, so there was no need to prepare food. Chapter 479. The desert wasteland at night seemed to have a different kind of loneliness. Standing on this piece of land, one couldn't help but feel a dull feeling in their hearts. Due to their depressed mood, everyone didn't sleep well. After a night's rest, everyone continued on their way. There were quite a few people who entered the desert wasteland recently. They didn't walk for long before they met a group of people who were going the same way. At this time, when they met other people in this place, no one was in the mood to stop and greet them. Each of them carefully stared at the people around them, afraid that these people would rush up and attack them. Fortunately, there weren't many people who directly attacked. Although everyone was looking for treasure, if they didn't see the shadow of the treasure, they naturally wouldn't do such a stupid thing. The desert wasteland was very big. No one knew where the treasure would appear. Although they didn't know the specific location, many people guessed that if the treasure really appeared, the most likely place would be near the center of the desert wasteland. Because of this guess, most people who were interested in the treasure went to the center. 2 months later, they had already walked more than half of the journey. On this day, they were walking through the desert as usual. However, they didn't expect to suddenly see a dilapidated castle in front of them. This castle looked very old, as if it had been damaged by some kind of power. The walls were full of traces of time. Why is there a building here? Goth looked at the dilapidated castle in front of him with some confusion. They had been in the desert wasteland for 2 months. In these 2 months, they hadn't encountered any creatures, nor had they seen any buildings. They hadn't even seen a broken canopy. Now, they suddenly saw a castle in front of them. Although this castle looked very dilapidated, it was still a proper building. Do you want to go in and take a look? Tang Nuode asked Mojiofri. Mojiofri shook his head. This place gives me a bad feeling. For safety's sake, there's no need to go in. As the team leader, Mojiofri was of course considering the safety of the mission. This place is really not right. We walked for 2 months and didn't see any buildings. Suddenly, a castle appeared. No matter how I think about it, it's a bit strange. Mingxi said. Yao Yu, what do you think? Huozhua turned to ask Yao Yu. Yao Yu suddenly took out her magic wand and mumbled something. Finally, a white light rushed into the castle. After the white light, nothing appeared. Yao Yu secretly frowned. That shouldn't be the case. He clearly felt that the yin qi in this place was very heavy. Why wasn't there any demonic aura? What's wrong? Seeing Yao Yu frowning, Mojiofri asked. Nothing. My magic didn't sense the existence of the quest spirit. Yao Yu said. Are we still going in? Irene asked. She remembered that such an ancient castle had also appeared in the original work, and the female lead had encountered danger in the castle. In this place, the female lead and male lead met again, and it was the place where their relationship took a step further. However, the people in the team this time were different from the ones in the original work. Would they still enter the castle this time? When she read the original novel, she wanted to complain. It was clearly a very strange thing for a house to suddenly appear in such a dangerous place, okay? How could the female lead and the others go in to rest without thinking about anything? This IQ was too high. Let's leave this place, Mojiofri said concisely. Irene silently sighed in relief. They had finally escaped a calamity. As long as they didn't go in, they would be fine. There was great danger inside. If it wasn't for the light of the male and female lead, it was very likely that many people would have died here. Everyone was about to leave, but suddenly the sky was filled with dense clouds. A heavy rain fell without any warning. If it was just ordinary rain, it wouldn't be a problem. However, this rain could actually gradually melt the magic and doqi barrier that they made. If they couldn't find a place to take shelter from the rain before the barrier melted, who knew what would happen when the rain fell on them? As a last resort, the group of 10 still entered the castle that they didn't really want to enter. The inside of the castle looked the same as the outside. It was very shabby, and there was a lot of dust and debris inside. At a glance, one could tell that this house had been abandoned for a long time. Zicheng and Irene used magic to help the others clear out a clean area. Everyone sat there, and no one spoke. Fengwu's large eyes swept over the surroundings from time to time. Her eyes flashed with doubt, but she didn't say anything. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand and didn't say anything. This rain that fell without warning made them feel very unusual. Mingxi had a feeling that perhaps this rain was specially made to keep them here. He just didn't know who the person who wanted to make use of this rain to keep them here was. Damn, this rain is too heavy. Luckily, we ran fast enough. Otherwise, the barrier on my body would have been melted. A man holding a heavy sword rushed in from the rain, flustered and exasperated. Behind the man, there were several people. These people all looked a little disheveled. There's something wrong with this rain, one of the men said. You don't have to say that. Who has seen such a powerful rain? It can even break through my barrier. How can it be right? The man running at the front said indifferently. I'm not talking about this. The man slightly frowned. He wanted to say something, but at this time, he noticed that there were other people in the house. The other people noticed the man's gaze, and only then did they notice that there were other people in the house. At this time, everyone had to shut up. The few of them found an empty corner, casually used magic to clean up, and sat together. After sitting down, no one spoke again. Mojiofri didn't care about these people. This place didn't belong to them, and they didn't have the right to not let others in to take shelter from the rain. He only needed to look after his own team. What the others wanted to do had nothing to do with him. Less than 2 minutes after this group of people came in, another group of people drenched in the rain rushed in. Irene noticed these people the moment they rushed in. It was actually the male lead and the others. Zicheng. Obviously, Caesar also noticed the female lead at the first moment. Irene touched her chin. She looked at the reincarnated man, Xiazhua, whose expression didn't change, but whose eyes flashed with a trace of uneasiness. See, your brother may soon become the female lead's puppet. Are you sure you can stop it? I can only try. Xiazhua responded with his eyes. He really wanted his brother to repent and be saved. He wanted to forget about Zicheng and treat his fiancée well. Unfortunately, his brother was very stubborn. If he insisted on stopping it, he was afraid that it would backfire. So he could only take one step at a time. Chapter 480. No one noticed the exchange of glances between the two of them. This short exchange was completed in an instant. Caesar. Zicheng didn't expect to see this man whom she had a good impression of in this place. There were many men who liked her, but not many of them were worthy of her attention. Caesar was definitely one of them. Zicheng was very happy to see the man she liked in this place. What a coincidence. You're here too. Caesar walked forward. Yes, what a coincidence. Zicheng smiled. Miss Zicheng, nice to meet you. Shouzo walked forward and greeted her warmly. If Shouzo could be happy to see Zicheng, she would write her name backwards. Irene complained in her heart. Hello, Master Shouzo. Zicheng greeted Shouzo in a friendly manner. Zicheng had her suspicions about Xiazhua. From the favorability system, Xiazhua's favorability towards her was actually 0. She had never seen such a low favorability rating from anyone. She thought that she had never provoked Shouzo, so why did he hate her so much? She did not know what the problem was. Perhaps the answer was related to Caesar. She would find a chance to ask Caesar. Zicheng secretly decided that she wanted to know the reason why Shouzo hated her. Zicheng wanted to know. Xiaocheng, who are these people? Caesar turned around and looked at Mingxi and the others. Every one of them had an extraordinary aura. They did not look like ordinary adventurers. Many guesses flashed through Caesar's mind about their identities. These are my classmates and seniors. I heard that there was a treasure in the desert wasteland, so I followed my seniors to see it. She could not say anything about the mission. Even if Zicheng had a good impression of Caesar, it was impossible for him to tell Caesar everything the moment he saw him. Besides, this was a secret mission of the school. Other than the mission executors and a few teachers, no one else knew about the mission. Zicheng could not tell Caesar about such a secret mission in front of so many people. She was not an idiot. Then our goal is more or less the same. Caesar and the others must have come here for that thing as well. Unlike others who didn't know what would happen this time, big families like Caesar knew something that others didn't. Many great clans knew about the seal on the heart of wood 1,000 years ago. This time, the seal had expired, and the heart of wood had reappeared in the world. Many large families were determined to obtain the heart of wood. Possessing the heart of wood was equivalent to possessing a future warlock saint or even a warlock god. No matter which family it was impossible for them to let such a good thing fall into the hands of others. Feng Wu. Only then did Xiazhua realize that Feng Wu was also here. Ever since they parted ways in the sea god's tomb, the two of them hadn't met again. Speaking of which, he still hadn't repaid the debt of gratitude that Feng Wu had saved his life. Xiazhua. Feng Wu tilted her head and looked at Xiazhua in confusion. You've become stronger, Feng Wu praised Xiazhua after looking at him for a few seconds. What's with that gratified look on your face? Young lady, do you think you're my elder? Xiazhua was slightly embarrassed. He hadn't seen this young lady for a while, but she was still the same. Why was she unhappy? She clearly loved it when her master praised her every time she improved. Didn't he like to praise himself? Feng Wu was a little disappointed and lowered her eyes unhappily. Thank you. You've become stronger too. Seeing that Feng Wu was unhappy, he didn't dare to remain silent and could only take over the conversation. Sure enough, Feng Wu's eyes lit up when she heard that. There was no longer any disappointment in her eyes. She was happy to be praised. The Feng Wu girl pursed her lips and seemed to be bubbling with happiness. Xiazhua, long time no see. You seem to have improved a lot. Mingxi had seen Xiazhua before. He knew that he was a new friend that Feng Wu had made in the sea god's tomb. If it wasn't for Feng Wu's protection, this young man might not have survived to the end. After that, he heard some things about Xiazhua. He was a young master who couldn't cultivate. Although he lived a luxurious life in that kind of family, he also had to bear unimaginable pressure. In this world where strength was respected, it was really not easy for this young man to not grow into a dark person. Mingxi, you're here too. Sorry, I didn't notice you just now. Xiazhua said embarrassedly. Just now, his attention was focused on Zicheng and Irene, and he didn't notice who else was around. Later on, he noticed Feng Wu, and his attention was attracted by Feng Wu. Now that Mingxi spoke, he finally noticed that Mingxi was here too. It seemed that he still couldn't remain calm when facing Zicheng. He was still nervous. Although he knew that she wasn't the famous Lord Fazhen on the mainland, he still couldn't remain calm in front of Zicheng. It's okay. Mingxi didn't mind at all. You've improved a lot. I didn't expect you to reach such a level in such a short time. When he first met Xiazhua, he clearly remembered that he was still a young man who didn't know anything and could only rely on others for protection. Now, he already had a certain level of strength. It seemed that Xiazhua also had his own opportunities. Mingxi didn't intend to ask about other people's opportunities. Everyone had their own opportunities. As the Prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, he didn't need to be curious about other people's opportunities. That time in the Tomb of the Sea God, I had some opportunities. That's why I'm so strong now. Xiazhua didn't plan to elaborate. The heart of water was very important. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. Apart from the important people in the family, even the ordinary members of the family didn't know about the heart of water. Because of the heart of water, he not only had the cultivation talent of a water sorcerer, but his water talent had also mutated into the ice element, which was stronger than water. This was something that Xiazhua didn't expect at first. I see. Mingxi nodded with a smile, but didn't ask any more questions. Caesar had brought more than 10 people with him. They were all experts in the family. Among them were women who adored Caesar and Xiazhua. When these women saw Zicheng and Feng Wu, their eyes kept darting like daggers. If looks could kill, Feng Wu and Zicheng would have been killed several times over. Young Master Caesar, young Master Xiazhua, we've already tidied up the place. You can go and rest for a while. Two beautiful women walked over. When they spoke, their faces were full of shyness. But when their eyes met Fengwu and Ziqing's, it was as if they were looking at their enemies. Ziqing, was she being provoked? Fengwu blinked innocently. What was it? Chapter 481. Caesar turned around and frowned slightly. Got it. I'll be there in a bit, Caesar said emotionlessly. The male lead was indeed aloof. Irene thought to herself as she stood behind Fengwu and the others. Young Master Caesar. The two girls still wanted to say something, but when they saw Caesar's impatient gaze, they shut their mouths and secretly hated Fengwu and Ziqing. They left angrily. After the two girls left, Caesar and the others didn't stay for too long. After chatting for a while, they returned to the resting area they had arranged. After a while, another person entered the ancient castle. This person was someone Fengwu and the others knew. The person who came was a chubby merchant. He was dressed in extravagant clothes and didn't hold any weapons in his hands. Behind him were a man and a woman wearing a cloak and a veil. Because the man and woman were covered from head to toe, no one could see their faces clearly. Although they couldn't see their faces clearly, they could feel an indescribable charm from them. Boss Heart. Mingxi didn't expect to meet this person again. The last time they went from Three Leaves Island to Falling Jade Island, they had boarded Boss Heart's ship. Mingxi had some impression of this boss who liked to let people hitch a ride. It's Mingxi and Fengwu. Boss Heart looked over and pretended to be shocked. Then, he walked up with a smile. I didn't expect to meet again so soon. Heart chuckled, looking like a nice person. Boss Heart is also interested in rare treasures? This Heart seemed to be just an ordinary merchant. His strength was very ordinary. Seeing him appear in a place like the desert wasteland, Mingxi felt an indescribable sense of strangeness. It just so happened that I was nearby. I heard that some rare treasure was about to be born, so I brought some people here to take a look. I'm a businessman, and the birth of rare treasures is an opportunity for experts like you. To a businessman like me, it's a business opportunity. Since I heard about it, of course I had to come and take a look, Mingxi nodded. Fengwu looked at Boss Heart. Fengwu didn't have any special feelings towards this chubby boss. Actually, other than taking a boat together and drifting on Death Island together, they didn't have any other friendship. Especially when they were on Death Island, all of them were thinking about how to survive, so there was no chance for them to connect. It was no wonder that Fengwu felt unfamiliar with Heart. After chatting with Mingxi for a while, he led the man and woman beside him to a corner of the hall. There, they casually tidied up a place, and then the three of them sat down to rest. The entire hall suddenly fell into silence. Outside the window, the rain was still falling, but no one entered the castle. The sky was filled with thunder and lightning, and the sound of thunder rumbled in the sky. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and there was no sign of it slowing down at all. It seemed that they wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. The people who stayed in the castle silently looked out the window, each of them thinking about their own plans. It was dark outside the window. Although it was still daytime, the sun was shining brightly, but it was as dark as night. It was as though the surrounding air had a trace of coldness. It's so cold. Irene couldn't help but mutter. She retrieved a cloak from her interspatial ring and quickly wrapped it around her body. She had already put on the thick cloak, but it was still so cold. Irene exhaled. Her breath was actually foggy. How was this possible? Even the sky wouldn't turn dark so quickly. However, after thinking about it, she understood. Those things had probably already begun to take action. Back when she was reading the novel, she didn't have a clear understanding of this ancient castle. She only saw people disappearing in this ancient castle. Then, the female lead and male lead found an opportunity to escape from the castle. The moment they escaped, they turned around and saw that the ancient castle was filled with people. That scene was written to make people's hair stand on end. It was very frightening. Even in the end, the author didn't explain how this place was formed. He also didn't write that the main character went on a killing spree and destroyed all the spirits. He only wrote how the main character escaped. Because the male and female lead couldn't see the spirits, their abilities weren't very effective against the spirits. If the female lead hadn't used her favorability to exchange some items from the system store as a life-saving measure, perhaps the male and female lead would have died in this place. From this point, it could be seen how terrifying this place was. Other than the male and female lead, almost everyone else who entered died in this place. More than half of the people who traveled with the female lead Zicheng died. In short, the death rate in this place was very high. Irene thought about how she wasn't the female lead. In this place, she had to follow the female lead to fight for a chance of survival. Of course, the others didn't know what Irene was thinking. The weather suddenly turned cold, and it was so cold that it was abnormal. A sense of unease rose in everyone's hearts. It hadn't been more than 10 minutes since they entered the ancient castle. Everyone had put on thick winter clothes, but even so, they still didn't feel warm. The surroundings were getting colder and colder. The furnishings around them seemed to be covered with a thin layer of ice. This place, Yao Yu, did you find anything? Huozhua couldn't help but ask. Although he was a fire magician and wasn't afraid of the cold, he still felt very uncomfortable with the sudden drop in temperature. Yao Yu shook her head. The rain outside is not right. I feel a suffocating evil spirit in the rain. Yao Yu's complexion was very ugly. She didn't expect that the first time she received an important task from the school, she would encounter this kind of situation that even she couldn't handle. The current situation was very dangerous. There might be a big guy hiding in the heavy rain. Moreover, it wasn't a big guy that she couldn't deal with. Although she was already a rare genius among the necromancers, she couldn't deal with just any undead. There were also many powerful existences among the undead. These existences had lived for who knows how long. The soul power in their body was incomparably powerful. It wasn't inferior to many human powerhouses. Yao Yu was very suspicious. They were likely to encounter that kind of existence that they couldn't deal with. As a necromancer who had received an orthodox education, she deeply understood how dangerous the situation was. The surrounding yin qi was so heavy, but she didn't see any spirits. This kind of unknown situation made Yao Yu very uneasy. Rain? But why did the temperature in this room suddenly drop so much? Donald asked in bewilderment. That's right. Could it be that the temperature drop has something to do with the rain? Gent pulled his collar. He felt very cold. Maybe it's because of the rain outside, or maybe it's because of other reasons. Yao Yu said with uncertainty. Mogfeld's complexion was somewhat bad. He was the team leader of this trip. He must ensure the safety of all the team members. Now that the heavy rain outside didn't stop, the temperature in the room was getting lower and lower. He felt somewhat irritated in his heart, as if something was going to happen. Chapter 482. Mojiofri was not the only one who felt uneasy. Almost everyone at the scene felt the same. Xiazhua knew nothing about the situation here. He only knew that Zicheng was recognized as the master of the Heart of Wood in the desert wasteland. As for the process, he had not heard about it. Even Zicheng's friends did not know about it. Xiazhua wanted to ask Irene. Irene knew more than he did. Perhaps she would know something. Unfortunately, now was not the time to talk. Otherwise, he could ask her about some things. The temperature was still dropping. Many places in the room had already formed a layer of frost. Some people even had some thin ice shards in their hair. If it were not for the magic and do qi protecting their bodies, they would have most likely frozen to death in this place. Wow, why is this place so cold? I'm freezing to death. As soon as Bao Bao came out of the space ring, his pair of beautiful little wings were almost frozen. He hurriedly flew into Feng Wu's arms and began to complain with his little mouth. Xiao Wu, I just took a nap. Why are you here already? Look at this place. The murderous aura outside is like rain, and the Yin aura inside is like frost. This is a place of extreme Yin energy. I don't know how many people have died in this place to become such a dangerous place. Bao Bao shook his head and looked around. He was so cold that he hid in Feng Wu's arms, only showing his little head. Bao Bao, you're awake. Irene was a little happy. She knew that this little guy was one of Zicheng's golden fingers, the wise beast. Although this little guy's personality had become a little chinibu, the wisdom of the wise beast should not have been affected. She knew how much the wise beast in Ziqing's hands had helped her. It could be said that it was one of Ziqing's greatest golden fingers. Now that this little guy was with Fengwu, it should only change its personality. She believed that its mind would not change. Recalling the plot again, she found that the wise beast did not appear at this time in the original work. Perhaps it had not hatched at that time. It was just that they were obviously the same beast. So why was there such a huge difference? The wise beast in Ziqing's hands was very pure, and it had an indescribable attachment to Ziqing. However, this little beast was definitely not pure. On the contrary, it was somewhat chinibu. It would often look at others with a chinibu expression, as if they were all mortals with fish lips. It made one's hand itch to reach out and give this little brat a good beating. What a brat! Irene didn't know that in the original work, because Bao Bao didn't want to form a contract with her, Ziqing used the system product to erase Bao Bao's original consciousness. Then, he used the system product to give birth to a new spiritual intelligence. Because it wasn't a soul at all, of course, its personality would be different. The spiritual intelligence that was born from the items in the system store was naturally very attached to Ziqing, the owner of the system. As a baby with spiritual intelligence, it was the smartest beast among all the mythological beasts on its body. It had its own natural pride, so naturally, it was impossible for it to flatter and curry favor with any human. Well, Bao Bao just woke up. Bao Bao rolled its eyes. Great, Bao Bao, do you know where this place is? Why is it like this? How can we leave here? As the smartest mythological beast in the world, the wise beast should know these things. He should know. Bao Bao's eyes flashed with a touch of light. This human seemed to know its identity. Who was this guy? How did he know who it was? Ziqing looked at Irene in confusion. It seemed that he didn't understand why she would ask a magical beast. Ziqing had missed the opportunity to get the wise beast, so he didn't know anything about Bao Bao's identity. Interesting, why would there be 3 people with the same time and space rules in this world? What was the relationship between these 3 people? Why would they all appear in this time and space? Even its current owner, Fengwu, had some time and space rules. Including Fengwu, there were 4 people. It was too strange. Didn't the world's consciousness care about it? Irene didn't expect that not only did she know Bao Bao's true identity, but she also almost lost her identity as a time traveler in front of Bao Bao. Bao Bao doesn't know. Bao Bao rolled his eyes, buried his head in Fengwu's arms, and said righteously, "Don't know. I'd be a fool if I believed you." Although she didn't know why Bao Bao didn't say anything, she had already made up her mind. If something really happened, she must follow the female lead and Fengwu. The female lead was protected by the female lead's immortal aura. Following the female lead might give her a chance of survival, and Fengwu, as the owner of the wise beast, would definitely be protected by it. Following Fengwu might also give her a chance of survival. Irene's little abacus rang loudly in her heart. At this time, Ziqing, as the female lead, also felt that the atmosphere around them was very bad. Bao Bao had just said that this was the land of extreme negative energy. She also heard it. Although she didn't know what kind of magical beast it was, she thought it should be very extraordinary. Ziqing even had a feeling that this unknown magical beast belonged to her. She didn't know why she had such a feeling, but when she saw this magical beast, she felt that it was hers. It should be hers. This feeling appeared unknowingly, and it kept echoing in her mind. Unconsciously, she felt that Fengwu was a little unpleasant to the eye. Why did Fengwu contract with so many magical beasts? Why on earth? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Fengwu had robbed her of her opportunity. She hated it in her heart, but she didn't show it at all. Chapter 483. Bao Bao explained in detail the reason for the formation of the land of extreme negative energy and the difference between innate and acquired. Ming Shi and the others then knew what kind of place they had mistakenly entered. When Yao Yu heard Bao Bao's explanation of the land of extreme Yin, her expression changed. She tried to recall the magical beast catalog in her mind, but she couldn't recall anything. In her mind, there was no magical beast that looked like this and had such a deep understanding of the undead world. Then, according to what you said, those places where people died will become the land of extreme negative energy? Donald asked with interest. Tisk, stupid mortals. The formation of the land of extreme negative energy requires the right time, right place, and right people. If the death of a few people can create a land of extreme negative energy, then this world would have long been occupied by the undead. Bao Bao rolled his eyes and sighed again at the low intelligence of humans. Sure enough, a genius like Bao Bao is hard to find even in 10,000 years. Bao Bao thought proudly. Senior Yao Yu, is what this little thing said true? Donald asked. Yao Yu nodded. Yes, it's exactly like what it said. The others around them naturally heard this conversation. For a moment, everyone's mood was a little heavy, and the vigilance in their hearts deepened. Then what should we do now? When will this rain stop? We can't stay here forever. Goth said with some annoyance. That rain is not something that ordinary people can touch. If we rush out, it's very likely that the evil spirit in the rain will invade our minds. At that time, we will be dominated by the killing intent in our hearts. Yao Yu said seriously. In short, if they rushed in, they might lose their minds and maybe become a madman. When the temperature in the room dropped to a certain point, it didn't continue to drop. Even so, this cold room was still cold enough to make people shiver. It seems that we can't leave before the rain stops. Irene shrugged. It was the same in the original work, but at that time, there was no Yao Yu, the necromancer, and Bao Bao, the brain. So there were still some people who didn't believe in evil and wanted to rush out in the rain. Anyway, the people who rushed out in the end didn't leave alive. They all died in the heavy rain outside. The rain outside the window was still so dense that it was impossible to see what was going on outside. All they could hear was the sound of thunder and rain, and the flash of lightning across the sky. The sound of the endless thunderstorm frustrated everyone. After confirming that they could not leave, the other groups of people also came over. Mogfield greeted them and asked more about the land of extreme negative energy. Although Yao Yu's temper wasn't very good, she didn't make enemies everywhere. When others came to show her goodwill, she didn't deliberately put on airs. Although her attitude wasn't very friendly, she wouldn't offend anyone. Time ticked by, but the rain didn't seem to stop at all. From the moment they arrived at this place, it was already nighttime. They couldn't see the situation outside, so they could only calculate the time by themselves. Time slowly passed, and the people trapped in this place each ate a bit of food. In the middle of the night, a scream suddenly pierced through the sky. Fengwu woke up from her sleep in a daze. At the same time, other people who were not on night watch also woke up. What's wrong? What happened? Someone asked nervously. It's the middle of the night. This was a voice that wasn't very happy about being disturbed. What's going on? The person who asked was Caesar. Caesar didn't bring many people, but his team had the largest number of people. The one who screamed just now was one of the two girls who went to Zicheng to call Caesar and Shozo. Young Master Caesar, bad news. Regina is dead. Quickly go and take a look. The girl said in a panic. Lead the way, Caesar said immediately as his aura changed. The girl hurriedly nodded and led Caesar and Shozo to the place where Regina died. Regina died in a small kitchen not far from the hall. The girl who first found Regina's body explained how she found the body. The girl said that Regina felt that a good friend had come to visit, so she had to find a place to clean herself up. She was surrounded by men, so of course, Regina couldn't tell them this, so she told the girl who found the body. If Regina wanted to clean herself up, she had to find a place where there was no one around. However, Caesar said that something was wrong in the house and that there might be something dangerous. He asked everyone to stay together and not wander around. The two girls didn't plan to go too far, so after looking around the hall, they finally found a small kitchen. Regina went to clean herself up while the other girl stood guard outside. They thought that there wouldn't be any danger. If something happened inside, the people outside would hear immediately. However, they didn't expect that when danger happened, there wouldn't be a chance to call for help every time. The girl who accompanied Regina waited outside for more than 10 minutes, but Regina didn't come out. She knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. She immediately felt that something was wrong. After opening the door with magic, she saw a cold body with a pale face. She screamed and ran to find Caesar, who then went to the kitchen with her. The girl screamed so loudly that everyone was alerted. Mogafrey sent 2 people to check out the situation, and he went to the scene himself. Mingxi and Fengwu also went with him. Regina died too tragically. Sob, who killed her? The girl who had survived cried sadly. One of them was in love with young Master Caesar, while the other was interested in young Master Shozo. There was no conflict of interest between them, so their relationship had always been good. Who would have thought that Regina would lose her life just because of a training trip? Juani, did you see anything when you came in? Shozo looked around carefully. Other than the window being open and the area near the window being wet from the rain, there was nothing out of the ordinary. The rain outside had strong energy and murderous aura. A human couldn't have come in through the window to kill someone. So, what killed Juani was interesting. Rue, go check on Regina's cause of death. The body in front of them didn't seem to have any obvious injuries. Even her clothes were not messy. Regina's face was very calm. It was because she was so calm that it made people feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. The one called Rue was obviously Caesar's trusted aide. Rue was young, only in his 20s. One look, and one could tell that he was talented. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caught Caesar's attention. Chapter 484. Irene was shocked as she followed behind. What was going on? Why was it different from the original novel? The original novel did not have such a scene. Although there were people around the male lead who died, the first one to die was not this girl called Regina. Moreover, the way she died was different from the original novel. Irene came alone. Mojiaffrey only brought Mingxi and Fengwu and did not bring Irene. Irene was curious and secretly followed them. Lu walked over and carefully examined Regina's body. Not long after, Lu reported the results of the examination without a change in expression. All the blood on Regina's body is gone. Also, on her neck, we found 2 small holes. This way of death is similar to those who were sucked dry by the blood breeds. Louis said, blood breeds. Caesar did not expect Regina's death to be related to the blood breeds. But why would there be blood breeds in this place? Shozo was also in disbelief. Didn't they say they met a spirit? How did it turn out to be blood breeds? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Blood breeds. They were monsters who killed without blinking and fed on human blood. But why would these monsters come to the desert wasteland? The blood breeds were known to be afraid of sunlight. With such a strong sun, were they not afraid of being burned to ashes? This is only one possibility. It could be something else that caused Regina's death. Whether it was the blood breeds or not, we cannot be sure. Louis said. Caesar nodded, satisfied with Louis's performance. No one could tell whether it was the blood breeds or not. Regina's death cast a shadow over everyone's heart. No one would be able to sleep tonight. Captain, do you think it was the blood breeds who did it? Erin went up to him. She wasn't afraid of this cold-faced captain at all. After all, there was an even colder guy in the team. When the 2 icebergs met, Skycliff didn't disappoint. With a comparison, the captain's cold face was not so unbearable. Mojiaffrey calmly glanced at Irene. The others in the team were also waiting for Mojiaffrey to tell them what had happened. They only knew that someone had died, and it was someone from Caesar's side. They had no idea how they died, or what the culprit was. After Mingxi and the other 2, as well as Irene, who had secretly followed them, returned, Zicheng and the others were very curious about what had happened. Zicheng wanted to go to Caesar and ask what happened, but it was obviously not the right time. Caesar's atmosphere was not good because of the death of a person. It was not wise to go now. Therefore, Zicheng chose to inquire about the situation from the others in the team. Yaoyu was also very curious. She looked at Mog Philip with the others. Mojiaffrey briefly explained what had happened. When they heard that the girl might have died in the hands of the vampires, they were stunned. The desert wasteland wasn't a place where vampires could stay. Although the temperature here was very low at night, It was terrifyingly hot during the day. Vampires were so afraid of sunlight, so how could they appear in this place? It was definitely not done by vampires. This was too inconceivable. Except for Skycliff, the guy who didn't care about anything, the others began to discuss the topic of whether the murderer was a vampire or not. Bao Bao yawned and lay on Fengwu's chest. A pair of bright eyes occasionally glanced at the position where Boss Hart and the others were. Just like what they said, it was very inconceivable for vampires to appear here, but it was not absolutely impossible. Now, there were two vampires here. No matter what those two wanted to do, if they dared to have any ideas about Xiao Wu, they would be destroyed. Bao Bao waved his little fist in his heart, and then fell on Fengwu's chest, snoring happily. Fengwu didn't know that her Rue beast had seen through someone's disguise, but she didn't say anything. Bao Bao wasn't a beast with a good temper. He only cared about the people in his heart. As for others, Bao Bao wouldn't be so kind to guide them. Of course, he could make an exception when he was in a good mood. Senior Yao Yu, do you think there's something evil here? That Regina person might have been killed by one of those things, Donald guessed. However, the more he said, the more he felt that what he said made sense. I haven't seen the body, so I can't be sure, Yao Yu said, shaking her head. There was a certain difference between those killed by spirits and those killed by vampires. The aura of vampires was also different from spirits. She could only tell when she saw the body. Do you want to go take a look now? Huozhua looked up and asked.
Sure.
Yao Yu's words weren't so annoying when she wasn't being willful. Mojiaffrey nodded and brought Yao Yu to see the body. Soon, they came back from looking at the body and confirmed that Regina's death had nothing to do with spirits. Regina's body didn't have the aura of a vengeful spirit. She couldn't even find Regina's soul. Yao Yu suspected that Regina's soul had been killed. Otherwise, as a new life, she couldn't have missed it. Regina's death was like a signal. Once someone was alone, they would die. However, their deaths were obviously different from Regina's. They were all frozen to death. Yes, as magicians and sword masters, they could actually freeze to death. The fact that they were able to enter the desert proved that they weren't weak. They had combat aura and magic to protect their bodies. Even if their bodies weren't completely unaffected, they wouldn't freeze to death. After looking at the bodies, Yao Yu said that they were all killed by Yin Qi. The reason why their bodies were covered in frost and looked like they were frozen to death was because there was a large amount of Yin Qi in their bodies. That was why they died like this. Although people kept dying, they didn't find any traces of spirit bodies. The rain outside the window showed no signs of stopping. The thick, dark clouds seemed to be pressing down on everyone's hearts, making them feel depressed. They had been trapped in this place for 2 days. In these 2 days, people were dying every day. The ones who died the most were the 2 teams that entered this place. This team was the only one that didn't have any relationship with Ming Shi's team. Other than that, many of the people that Caesar brought with him also died. Only Ming Shi's team and Boss Hart's team didn't suffer any losses. However, Ming Shi's team's good luck only lasted for the first 2 days. On the 3rd day, Ming Shi's team finally lost a person. This person was Gent. Gent suddenly fell to the ground and became a frozen corpse. He died in front of everyone without any warning. Chapter 485. This was the first time a teammate had died in front of them. Everyone's expression was solemn, and the surrounding atmosphere was suffocating. I want to leave this damned place. I don't want to die here. I don't want to die here. A man shouted emotionally. Another man rushed into the rain. The man's teammates wanted to call him back, but unfortunately, they didn't get any response. I'll go look for him. Another person rushed into the rain. The 2 men waited for a long time, but they didn't see anyone come back. If they hadn't already left this place of extreme negative energy, then the biggest possibility was that both of them had died in the rain outside. One of their team members suggested to go look for them, but no one agreed to this idea. Now, it was obvious that the people who rushed out were most likely dead. They're dead, the team leader said with a pained expression. Each of their brothers had left a trace of essence blood on him, and through this trace of essence blood, they could determine whether the other person was dead or alive. Now, the essence blood that the two of them left on him had completely dissipated. This proved that the two who rushed out no longer had any trace of life. Originally, they wanted to learn from the two who rushed out of the rain to leave this place, but after hearing that the two of them were dead, they gave up on this idea. Who would rush out when they knew that they were going to die? It wasn't like they were looking for death. People kept dying in the house, but outside the house, it was raining heavily. Moreover, this rain carried with it a fatal evil aura. If they couldn't find a way to leave, maybe everyone would die here. The hall was filled with an aura of despair. This ancient castle was like an island in the sea. They couldn't leave, and could only watch as the island slowly sank. Junt's death was a huge blow to Fengwu and the others. After Junt died, his soul was like the others. It didn't appear at all, and there wasn't a single soul in the surroundings. Yao Yu's back was covered in cold sweat. To be able to kill so many people in front of her, it could only prove that the soul that killed the people was of a very high level. Moreover, it was many times stronger than her. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to not see anything. Facing such a soul with unknown strength, you couldn't see its appearance, but it was able to kill so many people here without anyone noticing. Yao Yu really couldn't stay calm. Mog Philip took a deep breath and put away against corpse. His mood became heavier and heavier. There were members dying in front of him, but he was powerless to do anything. This feeling made Mog Philip's mood very bad. Captain Mojiaffrey, Mr. Hart, Captain Jiao, I don't think we can continue like this. If we want to leave this place alive, we need to gather everyone's strength and find a way to survive, Kaiser said with a serious face. Although these people stayed under the same roof, they were not united. They had always been doing their own dirty work. However, the current situation did not allow them to continue like this. Caesar had no choice but to stand up and call for everyone to unite. Mog Philip, Hart, and Captain Jiao were all silent. In the end, the three of them agreed with Caesar. They could not take care of their own people now. If they did not work together, it was very likely that none of them would be able to escape in the end. Young Master Caesar, what do you think? Jiao was the leader of the second team that had entered this place. Their team's strength was not weak. Even if they were weak, they would not be able to reach this place. Although they had not interacted much in the past 2 days, they already had a certain understanding of each other's identity. For example, Mojiaffrey. Jiao knew that everyone in Mojiaffrey's team was from the Notre Dame du Starlight to gain experience. As for Hart, he was a merchant who came to look for treasures. He wanted to find a treasure that could be sold for a good price outside. He also knew that Caesar was the young master of a large family. He did not know how large his family's power was, but to be able to have such a grandeur and extravagance, it was definitely not a small family. Jiao knew that these large families had their own inheritances. He hoped that this young master Caesar would know some useful information. This would be very helpful for them to leave this place. However, he also knew that the possibility of this idea being realized was not very high. As expected, Caesar did not know much about this place. Just like them, he only knew that this place was a place of extreme negative energy. He did not know anything else. Although they were disappointed, Caesar's idea had gained everyone's approval. Instead of waiting here to be killed one by this unknown thing, it would be better to find that thing and then kill it together. Originally, the possibility of this idea being realized was very small. Fortunately, there was a ready-made necromancer on the scene. With the necromancer's help, the success rate of Caesar's idea increased by a lot. Originally, if there was no necromancer, even if the evil spirit was standing there, they would not be able to see it. However, with a necromancer, it was different. A necromancer could see things that ordinary people could not. Although Yao Yu said that she did not see anything, there were many reasons why she could not see anything. It could also be that the evil spirit was too good at hiding. As long as they could find the evil spirit and then gather everyone's strength to kill it, they might be able to leave this place. In short, Caesar's idea had gained everyone's approval. Even Yao Yu agreed to try her best to help everyone find the evil spirit. Why was it so certain that this was done by the evil spirit? This was also Yao Yu's judgment. Yao Yu was very sure that the evil spirit that killed these people was not a human or a magical beast. It could only be an undead spirit. Moreover, it was an undead spirit with great resentment. Only with great resentment could it produce so much qi and freeze these people to death. No one had any objection to this statement. After all, there were professionals here. They were willing to listen to the opinions of professionals. Moreover, these people died so strangely. It was not impossible to say that the murderer was an undead spirit. For the first time, the four parties sat together for a meeting. During this time, because of Yao Yu's identity as a necromancer, she was treated with respect by the other three parties. Fortunately, Yao Yu did not show any displeasure to these people because of this. At least in front of outsiders, she still cared about her image. After making up her mind to strike first to gain the upper hand, Yao Yu followed these people to find the whereabouts of the undead spirit. This ancient castle was very big. There were many rooms upstairs. They searched one room after another. After searching for a long time, they did not find anything. Now, all the rooms they were in were one of the rooms on the third floor. This room was somewhat different. Why was it different? Because this was a room full of childlike charm. This room was full of dolls. In the wardrobe, there was a cute princess dress. Chapter 486. The room they were in now was one of the rooms on the third floor. This room was a little different. Why was it different? Because this was a room filled with childlike charm. This room was filled with dolls, and there was even a cute princess dress hanging in the wardrobe. Although the room was no longer clean, and the princess dress was no longer the same as before, these dolls, perhaps because of the materials used to make them, looked a little dirty, but they were still well preserved. The dolls were not damaged at all. This doll is so cute. Girls like this kind of doll, and Shinny was no exception. After seeing the pile of cute dolls, Shinny picked up one of the dolls and carefully used a cleaning spell to remove the dust on the doll. This was a blonde princess doll. The little princess doll was wearing a beautiful fluffy skirt, and a pair of blue eyes looked at people without blinking. It was a very beautiful and cute doll. Zicheng and Irene were not very interested in these dolls. They had long passed the age of playing with dolls. Although the two of them had different personalities, they were only interested in things that could improve their strength. They had no interest in these dolls that little girls played with. Yao Yu was also very interested in these dolls. It was not that she was still a child, but there was actually an extremely rare doll among these dolls. This rare doll's skin texture was very similar to a real person's, and its facial features were exquisite and beautiful. It was very popular among noble girls. More than 1,000 years ago, there was a period of time in Heavenly Wind Continent when these realistic dolls were very popular. Unfortunately, the only person who knew how to make these dolls had passed away before the skill was passed down to the next generation. This kind of rare anti-reality doll became extinct. Although many people had researched how to make these dolls, no one could make them successfully. Since then, these anti-reality dolls had been sold at a sky-high price. Every time these dolls appeared, whether it was noble ladies or royal princesses, they would all join in the fight for these anti-reality dolls. Now, in this dilapidated castle that had existed for who knows how many years, there were actually a few of these rare anti-reality dolls. Yao Yu could not believe her eyes. Because there were not many of these dolls left in the world, she had only seen them once in an auction. Later, it was bought by a royal prince and given to his daughter who had just turned 5. If these dolls were sold outside, they would definitely be able to sell for a large sum of money. Although Yao Yu was born in a noble family, it didn't mean that she would treat money like dirt. On the contrary, it was very inconvenient for her family to use money. In addition to the monthly allowance given by the family, if he wanted more, he had to find ways to earn it himself. The family's resources could not be tilted towards only one person. Now that she suddenly saw so many rare dolls in the outside world, Yao Yu immediately had an idea. She didn't feel any bad aura from these dolls, so there shouldn't be any evil spirits possessing them. As long as she could sell these dolls, she wouldn't have to worry about her future cultivation resources. Thinking of this, Yao Yu's eyes revealed a trace of joy. Another person also noticed the value of these dolls. She originally wanted to use the excuse that she liked dolls to take all of these dolls away. But after seeing Yao Yu's performance, she knew that it was impossible for her to take all the benefits for herself. It was obvious that someone had recognized the value of this doll. In fact, it wasn't just the two girls who recognized the doll. Ming-Shi also recognized the value of the doll, but he didn't say anything. These dolls were very precious to others, but to Ming-Shi, they were nothing. He was the future emperor of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. What kind of treasure couldn't he not have? How could he cherish these dolls with two girls? Fengwu recognized the doll as well. It was one of those dolls that had been made with a lost technique. Thinking that this was a lost art, she walked up with interest and picked up one of the dolls to take a look. Unexpectedly, when Fengwu's hand reached out, it was slapped away by Xinyi, who was not far from her. "Don't touch it, this is mine." Xinyi didn't like Fengwu to begin with, who asked her to have a good relationship with Xiazhua. As the daughter of the main branch, Xinyi had always paid attention to the two young masters of the main branch. Caesar's talent was too high, and it was impossible for her, a member of the main branch, to marry Caesar, a young master who would definitely become the head of the family in the future. Xiazhua, on the other hand, had suddenly become a genius from trash. Xiazhua couldn't become the head of the family in the future, and his talent was unparalleled. Naturally, Xinyi wanted to suck up to him. Unfortunately, Xiazhua, who had been reborn, had seen through many things. He didn't care about Xinyi's efforts to please him. After realizing that she couldn't please Xiazhua, Xinyi thought that it was because Xiazhua wanted to become stronger and didn't care about love and relationships. Although Xiazhua didn't accept her, he didn't accept anyone else either. This made Xinyi unable to completely give up. But after coming here, she realized that Xiazhua treated Fengwu differently. When he looked at her, his smile was very sincere. This smile was different from the polite and distant smile he gave to the others. Xinyi had been unhappy with Fengwu for a long time. She hadn't been able to find a chance to teach her a lesson. Now that the opportunity was in front of her, Xinyi wouldn't let it go. Fengwu had always been a sensitive girl. She was very sensitive to the likes and dislikes of others. Fengwu clearly sensed the hidden malice in Xinyi's eyes. Although she sensed it, Fengwu's large eyes were filled with confusion. She didn't understand why Xinyi's eyes were filled with such deep malice. This person was so strange. Fengwu's method of dealing with things she couldn't understand was to ignore them. Thus, Fengwu didn't care about what Xinyi said. She picked up a doll and stared at it. "Stop, I said it's mine. Don't you understand?" Xinyi saw that Fengwu was ignoring her. She was so angry that she slapped Fengwu's hand. Fengwu reacted quickly and dodged to the side. Xinyi didn't hit Fengwu. Instead, she hit Zicheng, who was standing beside Fengwu. The slap landed on Zicheng's shoulder. Zicheng felt a burst of pain. "Little Cheng." Caesar saw that Zicheng was hit and walked over with concern. Zicheng frowned slightly, then his brows relaxed. Although it hurt, he wasn't injured. At most, his shoulder would be slightly swollen. This Xinyi was too ruthless. Zicheng was secretly dissatisfied. This dissatisfaction wasn't only towards Xinyi, but also towards Fengwu. If Fengwu hadn't dodged, she wouldn't have been hit. Chapter 487. Although he was complaining in his heart, Zicheng didn't show the slightest dissatisfaction on his face. She gave Caesar a look that said she was fine, and didn't say anything else, nor did she pursue Xinyi's fault. Seeing that she was fine, Caesar let out a sigh of relief, but then he was dissatisfied with Xinyi. "Xinyi, what are you doing?" Caesar looked at Xinyi with an unpleasant expression, his eyes filled with obvious dissatisfaction. Xinyi's expression changed. She wanted to deal with Fengwu, and she didn't have any hostility towards Zicheng, who was obviously favored by Caesar. "Young Master Caesar, you can't blame me. She touched my things, and I just wanted to teach her a lesson. Who knew that this girl would be so cunning, and that's why Miss Zicheng was implicated." Xinyi looked at Fengwu with a displeased expression and pointed a finger in Fengwu's direction, as if she was afraid that others didn't know who she was talking about. "What in this room belongs to you? Why don't you tell us?" I didn't know that there was something that belonged to you in this castle that had been abandoned for so long. You're so shameless. Why don't you say that you lived here in your previous life, and that all the treasures in this castle are private property that you didn't bring into the grave in your previous life? If you say that, who can argue with you? Irene said sarcastically. What do you mean? Shieni was so angry that her face turned red, and she glared at Irene, cursing Irene's 8 generations of ancestors in her heart. What do you mean? I saw everything just now. You're twisting the truth. Irene glared back fearlessly. I'm not twisting the truth. This is her fault. If she hadn't dodged, would I have hit Zicheng? The more Shieni thought about it, the more she felt that she was wrong, and the more she felt that she had been wronged. Caesar looked at the quarreling 2 people in front of him with an unpleasant expression, and he secretly regretted bringing Shieni along. If he had known that she was such a troublemaker, he wouldn't have agreed to bring her along. However, it was too late for regrets now. He had to protect his own people. Enough. Both of you are in the wrong. Apologize to Zicheng together. Caesar looked at Shieni, then at Fengwu, and said expressionlessly. As soon as he said that, the members of Fengwu's team looked at Caesar with a subtle expression. Fengwu wasn't on their side. What right did he have to make her apologize? Anyone with eyes could see that it wasn't Fengwu's fault that Zicheng had been hit by Shieni. Even if he wanted to find the culprit, he shouldn't have involved Fengwu. Caesar realized that he had said something wrong. He could order Shieni to apologize, but he couldn't order Fengwu, because Fengwu wasn't his woman. However, the words had already been spoken and could not be taken back. It was already impossible for him to change his mind. Did I do something wrong? Fengwu blinked, trying to recall what she had just done. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. How strange. She clearly hadn't done anything wrong. Why would this person want her to apologize to Zicheng? It's your fault for dodging. Zicheng was dragged into this because of you. Of course you should apologize. Shieni said matter-of-factly. Why can't I dodge? Fengwu's eyes were full of confusion. It's because you dodged that Zicheng was hit by me. It's all your fault. Shieni said matter-of-factly. You hit him, not me. You guys are so weird. Fengwu said seriously, and walked back to Mingxi with the doll in her arms, ignoring these people. Fengwu couldn't understand Shieni's thoughts, and didn't intend to. I didn't do anything wrong. Fengwu looked at Mingxi seriously when she returned to Mingxi's side. She pursed her lips. You're right. It's not your fault. You don't have to apologize for someone who has nothing to do with you. Mingxi patted Fengwu's little head. There was a gentleness in his eyes that even he didn't notice. Fengwu girl was satisfied. The corners of her mouth curled up, and a trace of satisfaction appeared in her black, gem-like eyes. After receiving Mingxi's affirmation, Fengwu began to carefully examine the doll in her hands. Her large eyes flashed with a trace of confusion, but no one noticed. Fengwu walked back to Mingxi's side. Originally, Shieni wanted to rush over and cause trouble, but Caesar didn't have the intention to continue. Moreover, Zicheng obviously didn't want him to implicate Fengwu. Thinking that Zicheng and Fengwu were now members of the same team, if he embarrassed their team today, Zicheng's teammates would make things difficult for him in the future. For Zicheng's sake, he didn't plan to catch Fengwu and apologize again. Are you done yet? We're here to do business, not here to watch you guys settle personal grudges. Don't touch anything in this room. Put all these dolls back. Yao Yu said with an unkind expression. Yeah, you women are so troublesome. We're here to find that evil spirit, not to watch you guys fight. You're not done yet. Someone couldn't help but mutter. Zicheng's little face reddened when he saw the dissatisfied looks of others. He awkwardly apologized to everyone, hurriedly expressed his forgiveness to Shieni, and returned to his team. You're still thinking about attracting attention at a time like this, Yao Yu said unhappily to Zicheng. Then, she ignored Zicheng and turned her head to look to the side. Fengwu didn't care about the noise around her. She was fully focused on the doll. The doll gave her a very dangerous feeling, and there was a smell on the doll that she didn't like. It was like the smell of something rotten. This doll isn't anything good. You better put it back. Bao Bao sat on Fengwu's shoulder and whispered in her ear. What's wrong? Fengwu turned to look at Bao Bao. This thing is smelly and dirty. Bao Bao doesn't like it. Bao Bao sat on Fengwu's shoulder and gently swung his little legs. I don't like it either. It smells bad. Fengwu nodded and put the doll back where it was. Let's go. Let's look elsewhere. Yao Yu checked everywhere in the house, but she didn't find anything suspicious. Everyone had to leave the room and look elsewhere. However, after searching the entire house, he still could not find anything that was suspected to be an evil spirit. Everyone was disappointed. After finding nothing, they returned to the hall on the first floor. In order to search every room, they spent a lot of time. Everyone was tired. Each team arranged for someone to guard the room, and the others sat in the hall to rest. Shinny saw that everyone was resting, and then she took out the rare antique doll she found. The doll was very valuable, and she didn't want to give it up. Although Yao Yu said not to touch the things in the rooms, she only took the doll. It shouldn't be a problem. And Yao Yu looked like a useless person. If she was, she wouldn't have been unable to catch an evil spirit. Chapter 488. Seeing that everyone was resting, Shinny took out the rare antique doll she found. This doll was extremely valuable, and she didn't want to give it up no matter what. Although Yao Yu said not to touch the things in the rooms, it shouldn't be a problem if she only took one doll. Moreover, Yao Yu looked like a useless person. If she was capable, she wouldn't have been unable to catch an evil spirit. Shinny thought with disdain. She took out the doll and played with it in her hands. It felt like real skin, and Shinny loved it so much that she couldn't put it down. Shinny, you were too bold. Didn't I say not to touch the things upstairs? How dare you bring this doll down? A man who was friends with Shinny said in surprise when he saw the doll in Shinny's hands. What's there to be afraid of? Didn't I say that there's nothing wrong with this doll? Nothing will happen even if I touch it. Shinny waved her hands indifferently. Aren't you afraid of being found out by young Master Caesar? He said not to touch anything upstairs. The man reminded her kindly. Don't be afraid. Young Master Caesar won't really get angry over a doll. At most, I'll just apologize when young master finds out. In order to bring this extremely valuable doll out, even if young Master Caesar scolded her, she would accept it. All right, do whatever you want. Don't ask me to plead for you when young Master Caesar punishes you. The man saw that Shinny didn't care about his warning, so he didn't bother to say more. I know. Go guard the room and don't disturb me. Shinny waved her hands impatiently. The man could only sigh and walk away. The two of them spoke very softly, so they didn't attract much attention. Erin, on the other hand, happened to see Shinny take out the doll, but she didn't want to be nosy. In the original book, there was no record of these dolls. She naturally thought that these dolls shouldn't have any problems, so she just glanced at them and didn't care anymore. Using the rest time, Irene tried her best to recall the original story. She found out that the reason why Zicheng was able to escape was because she bought a boundary-breaking talisman from the system store and broke through the barrier of the land of extreme negative energy. Unbeknownst to them, the rain outside had already formed a barrier. It was impossible for them to leave unless they had a rare talisman like Zicheng. It was also mentioned in the original work that the boundary-breaking talisman required a lot of favorable impression points. In order to break the barrier here, Zicheng had spent most of her fortune. This was also the reason why Zicheng didn't use the boundary-breaking talisman from the beginning. It took a lot of effort for Zicheng to save up so many points. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she wouldn't be willing to use them. It seemed that if he wanted to escape, he could only rely on Zicheng's breaking boundary talisman. Irene sighed. She had told her not to touch the things in the room, but this Shinny took the doll downstairs. Yao Yu had a bad temper, and now she was even more unhappy. She had told her not to touch it, but Shinny didn't listen. She still took the doll downstairs. She didn't care about her at all. I really like this doll. Didn't you say that there's no problem with it? Why can't I take it? Shinny felt that she didn't do anything wrong. This doll was so expensive. It was only left here to collect dust. It wasn't for her to take it out. After selling it, She could find a good new owner for the doll. Since you've decided, I won't say anything. But if you touch the things here, you'll get into trouble. Yao Yu was too lazy to say anything more. As a necromancer, she knew better than anyone that some things couldn't be touched casually. If they did, they might lose their lives. This time it would depend on her luck. If she was lucky, then she would be fine. If she was unlucky, then it would be hard to say. Anyway, she had already warned her. It was Shinni who didn't listen. She couldn't be blamed if something happened. Chapter 489. Because no one used the toilet in the castle, there was an unpleasant stench floating in the air. There was a lot of dust in the surroundings, and there were even many small mosquitoes flying around. This environment was simply disgusting. When the 5 girls saw the toilet, their faces all changed. Fengwu was fine. She just frowned slightly and said in her heart that it was so dirty. The other 4 girls' faces were ugly. If they didn't need to go to the toilet, they would have immediately turned around and left. They had checked the toilets on the several floors above. They were definitely not this dirty. The toilets in the backyard of the first floor were actually specially prepared for the servants, so the environment naturally wouldn't be too good. Although it wasn't the first time they came here, they were still disgusted by the stench. It was too uncomfortable to let them go to such a dirty and smelly place to relieve their needs. It was really too difficult for them. Irene even shouted in her heart, "I can't do it." If they didn't want to stay here, they had to go upstairs. But if they left the first floor, they might encounter danger. Now that so many people had died, the 5 of them didn't dare to go upstairs. Left with no choice, the 5 of them had to use magic to clean up the toilet. Opening the window, the stench in the toilet was sucked into the heavy rain. Zicheng also used water magic to flush the toilet. Even those small mosquitoes were burned away by their fire magic. After cleaning up, the entire toilet looked much cleaner and smelled much better. Because the toilets on the first floor were specially designed for the servants, it was built quite big. At most, it could be used by 10 people at the same time. Irene thought of the ghost stories she read before. Didn't those stories say that the dirty things like to stay in the last compartment of the toilet the most? So after the toilet was cleaned, she immediately chose the middle compartment. Zicheng probably also read ghost stories, so he also chose the middle compartment. Fengwu randomly chose the third compartment and walked in. Shinni and Yao Yu also didn't choose. They randomly chose a compartment and squatted in. Outside, the sound of rain and thunder didn't stop. Just now when they were talking, it was fine. But once they stopped talking, they felt very scared. Irene swallowed her saliva. Although this world was a world of magic and swords, it did not mean that she was not afraid of ghosts. There were very few girls who were not afraid of ghosts and monsters. Other than Yao Yu and Fengwu who were not afraid of these things, the other 3 girls' hearts were somewhat unsettled. This was especially true for Irene and Zicheng. In modern society, they had been influenced by horror movies. Horror movies such as The Village Zombie, The Ring, Sadako, Hanako, and so on played in their minds from time to time. They felt a chill run down their backs. Where's Sunny? She's been in there for so long and she still hasn't come out. Yao Yu was the 4th person to come out. She didn't expect that there would be someone who came out later than her. Shinni, are you done? Zicheng yelled at the spot where Shinni was squatting, but there was no response. Irene couldn't help but call out to her, but there was still no sound. Other than the sound of the rain, there was no other sound in the toilet. There was no response from the 2 of them. The girls exchanged glances and felt that something was wrong. Yao Yu, as a necromancer, was the first to step forward. Irene and Zicheng frowned and followed closely behind. Fengwu was the last to walk. Yao Yu pulled Shinni to guard the spot where she was squatting. Her other hand was holding her staff, and she swallowed her saliva. Just as she was about to pull the door open, the door unexpectedly opened by itself. Irene and Yao Yu were shocked and couldn't help but scream. What are you doing? Are you trying to scare me to death? Shinni glared at Yao Yu and the others with dissatisfaction. What are we doing? I should be the one asking you what are you doing? We called you for a long time and you didn't answer. We thought you were already killed. Irene also replied, not to be outdone. Who said that I must answer when you call me? SK, I won't answer. What can you do to me? Shinny's complacent look made people want to give her a few tight slaps. Yao Yu was so angry that she wanted to hit someone. She was a 7th-year student of the Notre Dame du Starlight. When had she ever been treated so rudely? If it wasn't for Zicheng holding her back, Yao Yu's palm would have already landed on Shinny's face. The group parted unhappily because of Shinny. Yao Yu left with the girls and her team, not paying any attention to Shinny, who was walking at the back. They didn't notice that Shinny's expression changed when the 4 of them turned around. She was struggling and confused, and there was even a trace of pain in her eyes. Her expression changed very quickly, and soon she was back to her previous self, walking behind the 4 of them with a nonchalant expression. After that unhappy parting, no one paid special attention to Shinny. So when Shinny suddenly died a day later, Feng Wu and the other girls were shocked. What a strange death. She died with a smile. This place is getting creepier and creepier. If we don't find a way to leave, I'm afraid we'll all die here. How can a dead person still smile? Looking at her smile, I feel a chill down my spine. That's right. It's really creepy. What shocked everyone about Shinny's death wasn't her death, but the way she died. Her death was different from everyone else's. The others would either freeze to death with no expression on their faces, or die with a pained expression on their faces. But when it came to Shinny, she died with a smile on her face. Her smile was so contented that it was terrifying to see a dead person smile like that. Other than this smile, the cause of death was exactly the same as everyone else's. She was frozen to death. When she died, Shinny's body was covered in a layer of white frost, as if she had been frozen in a freezer for a whole night. When Shinny died, she was still tightly hugging the doll that she had secretly taken away. She didn't let go of the doll until she died. The whispers around weren't hidden from the others, so of course the people from Caesar heard them. But at this time, they couldn't care less about what others were saying. As more and more people died, everyone wanted to leave. But the rain didn't stop, so no one could leave. They wanted to find the evil creature that had killed so many people, but they couldn't find any clues. At this time, Shinny died. Her death put a lot of psychological pressure on everyone. Everyone felt a little helpless. They couldn't find the evil creature, and they couldn't leave this place. Were they really going to wait for death? Is there something wrong with this doll? Zicheng asked doubtfully. This doll was brought down by Shinny herself from upstairs, and it was very precious. Although he hadn't spoken to Shinny since yesterday, Zicheng still noticed some of her actions, such as her love for the doll. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.